The Lord of the Depths, a Game of Thrones tale. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101. Damn, is he a beast? 301 Ak. Young Cai has been under the siege of Jorah and Barristan for more than half a month, and it will be a month soon. The wise lords of Young Cai and some good and great lords who fled to Young Cai did not expect Daenerys to dare to start a war first. In the Great Pyramid of Young Cai, many nobles gathered here, and Young Cai could not hold on. Since being besieged by more than 20,000 people of Daenerys, they have lost contact with the outside world. Although there is endless food in their pyramid, the slaves in the city have frequently rioted. In the original book, Daenerys was entangled by the Sons of the Harpy and could not take the initiative to control the slavers bay and finally fell into the Meereen knot. But now Daenerys, with the help of Jack, quickly stabilized the situation in Meereen, and the rebellion of the Sons of the Harpy was also suppressed. Instead, Daenerys sent some people to sneak into Young Cai first and began to incite the slaves to rebel while Dany was besieging the city. This bitch of Targaryen actually dared to send troops to attack us first. All the merchant ships were attracted to Astapa. I haven't made any gold for 2 weeks. A fat man looked unhappy, but the people around him didn't bother to pay attention to him. You are still thinking about making money now? We should consider how to hold on until the support of our allies arrives. Damn, there are at least 3 months left. The fat man chuckled. There won't be even 3 supplies in your pyramid. If you beg me, I can sell you some at a high price. Enough. You idiot. Haven't you noticed that the way your slaves look at you is not right? Kraznys of Young Cai is the greatest wise lord and the temporary ruler of Young Cai. Originally, he was going to fund the Sons of the Harpy to assassinate Daenerys Targaryen's men, but a father of dragons came out halfway and directly pressed the Sons of the Harpy to death in Meereen. This indirectly led to Daenerys Targaryen being able to free up her hands and send troops directly to Young Cai. Even 18,000 freemen were trained. What puzzled Kraznys the most was that Dany's expedition actually received the support of the centrists in Meereen. The centrists and Queen's nobles in Meereen took the initiative to give a large amount of money, food, and siege equipment to Daenerys Targaryen. It can be said that there are only a few small lords in Meereen who are constantly rebelling, and most of the lords have completely turned to Daenerys. Kraznys asked with some melancholy, "Don't you realize your situation? The big wave chamber of commerce has reached a cooperation with Daenerys. Meereen no longer needs slave trade, and all the centrist lords have turned to Daenerys. The big wave chamber of commerce reached a cooperation with Daenerys, making Daenerys a distributor. Daenerys can buy Atlantis goods at a low price and only needs to pay a distribution fee every year. So Daenerys quickly replaced the slave trade in Meereen with Atlantis's fine wine, attracting a large number of merchants to make reservations. This behavior also led the neutral nobles to think about turning to Daenerys, until Daenerys suddenly sent troops to Young Cai. 50 young knights were appointed as officers and followed Barristan and Grey Worm to participate in the war. At this time, the centrist nobles no longer hesitated and turned directly to Daenerys, providing a large amount of supplies and siege equipment. Even the Lazzars immediately raised a batch of food and grass to Meereen after hearing about the outbreak of the war. Humph, what can we do with the support of the great lord of the centrists? We have the support of city-states such as Volantis and Nugis behind us. The fat man snorted coldly. The key is whether we can hold on for 3 months. We only have 5,000 slave soldiers. Not only do we have to suppress the slave uprisings in the city, but we also have to defend the city. There are plenty of slaves in the city. We can gather another group of slaves to defend the city. The fat man argued, as if he had come up with a brilliant idea. Kraznys' face was dark. He was too lazy to pay attention to this fat man. In the morning, he arranged slaves to guard the city, and in the afternoon, the group of slaves dared to open the city gate. Fortunately, the slave soldiers were treated well. Except for their status as slaves, they were treated the same as freemen. Otherwise, the 5,000 slave soldiers would probably have rebelled. Kraznys looked at another great lord, Dag Freeman, and asked, "Have you received a reply to the letter you sent out?" Dag Freeman's face looked a little ugly. After a moment of silence, he said, several ravens were shot down, but a few still flew out. But I just received a letter. Krasnys looked at Dag, who looked ugly, and immediately had a bad feeling in his heart. I received 2 letters this morning, one of which was from Astapa. Astapa? Isn't it controlled by a butcher? What threat can it pose? Krasnys was a little confused. Even if Astapa was captured by Daenerys Targaryen, it didn't matter. Anyway, they were not allies, and it would be a good thing to disperse Daenerys Targaryen's forces. Daenerys Targaryen is pregnant and has already made her unborn child her heir, regardless of gender. Dag said dully. Daenerys Targaryen is pregnant? Krasnys was shocked. Once Daenerys is pregnant, it means that she has an heir, which directly improves the cohesion of her subordinates by several levels. Whose child? Who did it? Isn't it said that Daenerys has lost the ability to get pregnant after being cursed by a witch? Who else can make Daenerys Targaryen not shy about the news of her pregnancy at all and release it at this critical moment to cheer people up? Dag looked helpless. He originally thought that the departure of the father of dragons would be a loss of an arm for Daenerys Targaryen. Unexpectedly, at the critical moment, Daenerys Targaryen actually released the news of her pregnancy, and it was the child of the father of dragons. This clearly tells the world that Meereen still has allies, and it is still a solid alliance with offspring as the bond, and the offspring, regardless of gender, will be her heir. Damn it, this bastard, he is a beast, and before he left, he even wanted to make his queen pregnant. He deserves to die. Krasnys could no longer hold back his anger, and directly kicked over the slave kneeling in front of him, and kicked the slave's lower body several times in a row. The little slave girl was in so much pain that her eyes were filled with tears, but she was too scared to resist or speak out, and could only pray in her heart that the mother of dragons would kill these slave owners quickly. After venting his anger, Krasnys asked again, what's the news about Astapa? Did Daenerys send troops to occupy Astapa? Dag looked embarrassed, and he didn't know whether he should continue to speak, for he was afraid that Krasnys would faint from anger. Chapter 102, each with his own agenda. Krasnys noticed that Dag's face looked a little off. Tell me, let's see how bad it can get. Dag took a deep breath and slowly said, Astapa has been occupied by the Unsullied, but they are not the Unsullied of the Mother of Dragons, but the Unsullied of Jack Poseidon, the Father of Dragons. We are now caught in the middle. Krasnys. What is meant by misfortunes never come singly, this is it. Krasnys' face was extremely ugly. Daenerys had not entered the city to sweep before. But now if the city wall is breached, Daenerys will settle accounts with these wise lords. Krasnys, I think we need to evacuate young Cai. The letter said that Jack Poseidon can control the god of the sea. The gate of Astapa is like thin paper in front of the god of the sea. The god of the sea. Bullshit, how can we retreat now? Young Cai has been surrounded by Daenerys. Krasnys almost lost his mind, and the faces of other great lords were not good either. If they had the confidence to hold on for 2 or 3 months before, now that they knew Daenerys was pregnant and the father of dragons occupied Astapa, they had to think about how to slip away. Their industries are not only in the Slavers Bay, but also in the New Gis Empire and the 9 major trading cities. So even if they escaped, they could live well. In fact, as long as they saved their lives, they would have a chance to retake young Cai with the help of other forces. This is the idea of the great sage lords, who would have no worries about firewood if they kept the Green Mountains. But many of the small sage lords had flickering eyes. The great sage lords' industries were all over the continent of Essos, and they could continue their luxurious lives, no matter where they went. But they were different. Being a sage lord was their limit. They concentrated almost all their industries on cultivating bed slaves. If all the great sage lords sneaked away, wouldn't they have to stay and wait for death? I think we should do our best to resist the Mother of Dragons. As long as we can hold on until the reinforcement arrive, we can completely block the Mother of Dragons and the Father of Dragons in the Slavers Bay. Juanbek, one of the small sage lords, immediately spoke up to persuade Krasnys to fight to the death. After hearing what Juanbek said, Krasny immediately said, don't worry, Juanbek, our foundation and everything we have are in young Cai, and we will definitely not give up young Cai. Krasny's eyes unconsciously glanced to the lower left corner, and this scene happened to be seen by Juan Beck. Damn, what a damn old fox. Juan Beck cursed in his heart. He is a newly promoted little wise lord, and he is recognized by other wise lords because he has his own pyramid. From a small slave trader to the position of wise lord, he naturally has a set of skills to make a living. That is, he is very careful in observing subtle expressions and can often see some information from people's subtle expressions. Just now, when Krasny said that he would defend young Cai to the death, his eyes were obviously downcast, which was a typical lie. Juan Beck looked at the expressions of peace of mind of the other little wise lords and was speechless in his heart. These fools didn't know that they were about to die. Do you really think that everyone is brothers on the same boat? Nimmer, they have a lifeboat. But at this time he had no good solution and could only show a relieved expression like everyone else. Krasny's discussed with many wise lords, great lords, and good lords for a long time how to hold on until 3 months later. But until everyone dispersed and went back to their own homes, no effective solution was discussed. It can only be said that Daenerys acted too quickly. They didn't even have time to recruit mercenaries before they were besieged in young Cai by Daenerys. On the way back, Juan Beck glanced at the crumbling city walls in the distance, and he had to find another way out. The walls of young Cai themselves gave people a shaky feeling. If it weren't for the sufficient defense supplies in the city and the endless supplies of the crossbowmen and slingers on the city walls, Daenerys would have broken in long ago, and it would definitely not have been possible to hold on for a month. After everyone left, Krasny immediately called his trusted men, and he was ready to run away. If it were only Daenerys, there would still be hope of defending young Cai, but now Jack has also occupied Astapa. Young Cai really can't be defended. In fact, Jack had no intention of attacking young Cai. He even wanted to do business with young Cai because he didn't know that Daenerys was pregnant. But Krasny knew that in his opinion, Daenerys was pregnant with Jack's child, so Jack and Daenerys were the same kind of people, in the same group. Krasny asked the maid to grind for him, and then wrote a letter to Lorak in Meereen with a quill. In the letter, Krasny asked Lorak to mobilize all the sons of the Harpy to cause chaos, and it would be best if they could assassinate Daenerys Targaryen. Even if they couldn't assassinate, they had to create chaos, so that Daenerys would transfer some of the Unsullied back. Krasny didn't say why he did this, because only by doing this could he have a greater chance of evacuating young Cai safely. As for what he said in the Pyramid Hall about defending young Cai to the death, that was bullshit, just to deceive those idiots. Now young Cai is obviously undefendable. If they had made preparations earlier and hired some mercenaries first, then young Cai might still be able to defend. But now there is no chance at all. The nobles of Meereen have also funded Daenerys with a large number of siege equipment. Young Cai can't hold on for long. So now Krasny's wisest choice is to pull the New Gis Empire, where there is still a prosperous slave trade, and he also has a lot of industries there. As for the life and death of others, it has nothing to do with him. It's better if they die, and he can have fewer competitors. Thinking of this, Krasny immediately arranged people to prepare. Young Cai has only 2 gates, but there are many small gates and dog holes. Although Daenerys surrounded Meereen, in fact she only surrounded 2 gates. Daenerys' main attack place is the North Gate, and the West Gate is only guarded. At the same time, Dany gave each young knight 40 light cavalry, and asked them to lead people to patrol the entire young Cai to prevent young Cai's spies and messengers from going out. Finally, they will be rewarded according to the number of spies and messengers they killed. This will be the first battle for this group of young knights. Barristan is not ready to let this group of young knights who have been trained for about half a year participate in a real war. Knights are different from soldiers. The training cycle of knights is very long and their value is far higher than that of ordinary soldiers. So Barristan ignored the request of these young knights and directly arranged for them to patrol with the few light cavalry that were not very useful in siege. This would allow them to see blood and experience the feeling of commanding a team, and also prevent them from encountering fatal dangers, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Chapter 103, Plans cannot keep up with changes. That morning, on the Poseidon at the Astapa dock, Jack was in a good mood and sang. At break of day, in hope we rise, we speak your name, we lift our eyes, tuna hearts, To your beat, where we walk, Jack sang awake, live, song with passion. After crossing, Jack's 5 notes were unprecedentedly strengthened. He had to admit that singing really depends on talent. Some people are born with a good grasp of songs. But soon Jack was no longer happy. Because Jack received the news brought by Kato in a hurry. Dina is pregnant. The other party insisted that the child is his. Jack frowned. Isn't this a scam? Jack was definitely not wrong. Dina was cursed by the witch and lost the ability to get pregnant. Didn't they say that they had to wait until the sun rises from the west and sets in the east until the sea dries up? Jack glanced at the sun that had just risen in the east and cursed in his heart. He knew very well what Dina's pregnancy meant. Now the whole world knows that the child in Dina's belly is Jack's, and the slave owners naturally know it too. It is a small matter to affect Jack's business and make money. After all, businessmen pursue profits. As long as the Seychelles Islands are not surrounded, there will not be much impact. The biggest impact is on the positioning of Atlantis. Now no matter how Jack explains, he has been classified as Dina's camp by the world. But now that things have come to this, Jack knows that it is useless to say more, and he can only change his plan in time. Sure enough, plans can never keep up with changes. Kato, what is the situation in Yongkei? Jack suddenly asked. Your Majesty, Meereen has dispatched more than 20,000 people to directly surround Yongkei, but Yongkei is very resilient, but it has also reached the end of its strength. You stay in Astapa, I will take 2,000 people to Yongkei. Jack is ready to go to Yongkei in person. Dina released the news that she was pregnant with Jack's child, with the purpose of forcing Jack to join her camp. Since he was powerless to defend himself, he might as well go all out and charge into Yongkei to grab some first. The wise lord of Yongkei was richer than the good lord of Astapa. After all, Yongkei was the second largest city in the Slavers Bay, so it had to be stronger than Astapa. So Jack immediately contacted Poseidon in the deep sea and asked him to wait in the waters of Yongkei's dock. Eri, bring the blazing flame. Kato, summon the Unsullied immediately. I want to go to Yongkei immediately. Understood, Your Majesty. The two immediately prepared. Soon, the Unsullied had assembled. Jack rode on the blazing flame, followed by the Unsullied, and marched all the way. It usually takes about 6 to 8 days to get from Astapa to Yongkei, but Jack only took 5 days and arrived at the vicinity of Yongkei in the evening of the 5th day. At this time, the scouts of the Meereen army had already discovered Jack and his party. After confirming that Jack and his party were not reinforcement from the slave owners, the scout team sent one person to contact Jack, and the others were ready to escape at any time. But soon the people sent by the scout team saw the person riding on the red Fergana horse. He was shocked. He didn't expect that the Prime Minister would bring 2,000 Unsullied to support them. Now Jack is still the Prime Minister of Meereen. In addition, everyone knows that Jack made Dina pregnant. He has become the object of admiration of many men in Meereen. It's okay to quickly stabilize the situation in Meereen during his tenure as Prime Minister, but he actually made the Queen pregnant and then slipped away. It's really outrageous. Prime Minister, why are you here? The scout asked with some surprise. He instinctively thought that Jack was here to support them and never thought of other possibilities. Of course I'm here to support you. Take me to see your commander. Yes. The scout led Jack's army without hesitation. After all, according to the political structure of Meereen, Jack, as the Prime Minister, is fully qualified to directly control the army of Meereen. Soon Jack arrived at the camp of the Meereen army with 2,000 Unsullied. Beristan and Jorah thought that it was the Unsullied reinforcement that Danny had sent, but they didn't expect that the leader was actually Jack. They knew that Jack had thousands of Unsullied under his command, but they didn't expect Jack to bring the Unsullied to support them. Long time no see, Beristan, Jorah. Jack greeted, but neither of them looked at Jack well, and Beristan was upset about Jack calling him a traitor. Jorah was because Dina was pregnant by Jack. Just imagine, the man who made your goddess pregnant was right in front of him. Jorah was very restrained for not having a trial by combat with Jack. Jack, holding the trident of Poseidon, stood on horseback and asked the two men condescendingly, we have been attacking for so long, why haven't we conquered Yongkei yet? What crime should you be punished for? Without giving the two men a chance to speak, Jack continued, is this how you do things when I'm not in Meereen? After leaving me as the Prime Minister, you can't even do such a small thing as conquering Yunque, you rubbish. Jorah and Barristan then remembered that Daenerys had not spoken, and Jack seemed to still be the Hand of the King of Meereen, and Manda was still a Deputy Prime Minister. The Hand of the King, the Hand of the King. When there is no king, the Hand of the King can sit on the throne and act on behalf of the king, which shows the power of the Hand of the King. At this time, Jack suddenly scolded them in the name of the Hand of the King, and they could not say anything to refute. Because it was true. Before Jack left, Meereen was indeed going smoothly, but when Jack attacked Yunque for the first time after he left, they were blocked by the Wise Lord of Yunque for a month. You must know that the Wise Lord of Yunque has not hired mercenaries to defend the city for them, and mercenaries are their strongest means of defending the city. HMPH, give the order, the whole army rest for an hour. I will personally summon Poseidon to break the gate of Yunque. In fact, Jack didn't have any convenient way to attack the city. If Poseidon and Corachal were not there, he could only choose the normal method of attacking the city. Jorah and Barristan looked at each other. They didn't believe the news from Astapor. Poseidon was incredible. But now that Jack had given the order, they had to do it. Anyway, if the city gate was not broken, it would be Jack who would be embarrassed. The reason why Jack let the army rest for 2 hours was mainly to let his own Unsullied rest, so that they would have enough physical strength to plunder the wealth in the pyramid when they entered the city. Jorah and Barristan certainly didn't know Jack's idea. They followed Jack's order and ordered the army to start resting. After an hour, they followed the Prime Minister to launch a charge. When everyone heard that the Prime Minister was coming, their morale suddenly improved to a higher level. Many of them had followed Jack Poseidon during the War of Liberation of Meereen. At that time, Jack personally led the liberated slaves to attack the standing army of Meereen. His powerful fighting power and inspiring speech left a deep impression on everyone. Chapter 104 Sin and Revenge. An hour passed quickly. Jack led his 2,000 Unsullied to lead the charge, and the rest of the Meereen army followed behind the Unsullied phalanx. Jorah and Barristan stood behind Jack, and they also wanted to know how Jack summoned the god of the sea. Many night teams that were originally on patrol also returned, among which Borhasi and Abdulaziz returned the fastest. As scouts, they were the first to learn about Astapor, because many defeated slave soldiers spread from Astapor to the surrounding areas. So they naturally knew the rumor that Jack summoned the god of the sea to smash the city gate. The handsome Stavn Hazaka whispered to Abdulaziz, do you think the rumors are true? Abdulaziz did not answer this question, but asked, it is said that the Prime Minister is a descendant of Blackfire, and was later chosen by the heart of the ocean, and became the king of the sea. Not only can he breathe underwater, but he can also summon the sea god to fight for him. Do you think it is true? Stavn shook his head, I don't know, these are all myths and legends of Atlantis. They even specially produced a lot of myth story books for sale. Does anyone still buy that stuff? Abdulaziz said in surprise. He also saw the final version of related books in Meereen. Stavn shrugged, many people read it as a novel. The grand world view is much better than the down and out lady falling in love with the wandering knight. There are novels in the ice and fire world, but most of them are first-person autobiographies. The content of the story is also stereotyped. In addition to the down-and-out nobles, there are down-and-out ladies. There is no novelty at all. Jack has also read some story books, and his evaluation is, too bad. It was not even as good as a flopped Game of Thrones fanfiction titled Game of Thrones, selling the gods at the beginning. Especially the first-person perspective, telling the sadomasochistic love story between a knight and a lady. It was not enough that there was no sense of substitution, but the key point was that there was no excitement, so it deserved to be a flop. After the Royal Scientific Research Institute of Atlantis made straw paper according to his dictation, he would publish all the novels of his previous life. The last chapter would only have 1,000 words, and each chapter would be disconnected at a critical moment. In this way, he could make a lot of money from those idle nobles and daughters. Abdulaziz raised his eyebrows. He was not interested in novels and biographies. But being evaluated by Stavn like this made him curious about the myths and legends of Atlantis. Just as Abdulaziz was about to talk to Stave, a roar came from behind everyone. There were 3,000 cavalrymen in the Marine army, and the horses were all purchased from the Dothraki at a high price. But at this time, the group of fine horses that had been bought at a high price began to riot, and no matter how the riders tried to appease them, it was useless. Stave pulled the warhorse under his crotch with some effort. What's going on? Where is the roar coming from? Even with the saddle, he still felt that he was about to lose control. Abdulaziz was a little better than Stave. He was better at riding horses than Stave, and barely controlled the black horse under his crotch. In the direction of the dock. Look, something is coming up, Abdulaziz suddenly said. They were not far from the dock of Astapor. At this time, everyone looked in the direction where the roar came from, and a strange looking creature came ashore from the dock. Jorah and Barristan also found Poseidon, and immediately looked at Jack in shock. What are you doing? Hurry up and appease the army. Don't be scared by your own people and flee. Jack reminded. The three Free People's legions have only been trained for half a year. If it weren't for the Unsullied led by Grey Worm, a month of siege would have made them lose their fighting spirit. Jorah and Barristan, who had reacted, immediately began to appease the people of the Freeman's army, telling them that this was the sea god summoned by the Prime Minister to help them break the city. With the two's efforts to appease them, the talents of the three legions slowly calmed down. They had not been exposed to the myths of Atlantis, so they were more afraid of Poseidon rather than of the Atlanteans. The two were different. The appearance of Poseidon was also discovered by the slave soldiers on the walls of Yunque. They were ready for battle and suddenly there was a riot, but the slave owner still tried his best to appease them. Tell them that the army of Meereen has been targeted by the monster, and this is the goddess of the sea helping them. The slave soldiers who had just calmed down had not yet caught their breath when they saw the dorsal fin of the monster light up with blue light. Then a dazzling beam of light like thunder came out of its mouth, directly shattering the crumbling gate. The slave soldiers were stunned, and the slave owner was silent. What is this? Controlling thunder? Run, run. The goddess of the sea is coming to punish us. The thunderbolt will kill us completely. Run. The slave soldiers who reacted first threw away their weapons instantly and didn't care about the supervising soldiers behind them because the supervising soldiers had already run away before they could react. The defenders on the entire city wall were completely frightened by the atomic breath and collapsed. Not to mention them, even the free people of Meereen were frightened by this scene and almost fled. Before everyone could react, Jack waved the trident of the Sea King and rushed in with his Unsullied. While the wise lord of Yunque hadn't reacted yet, he rushed in and looted first. In the world of ice and fire, the first thing to do after breaking the city is to burn, kill and plunder. After Jack rushed into Yunque with the Unsullied, Jorah and Barristan reacted, and each led his people to rush into Yunque. The Lazar faction and the Meereen faction, led by Borhasi and Abdulaziz, were even more eager. Because of Yunque's stubborn resistance, Daenerys has issued a killing order against Yunque's wise lords, and she happened to have a large number of great lords who surrendered to her. When the second sons of these great lords captured Yunque's wise lords, they cut off their heads and asked her for credit. She took the opportunity to reward Yunque's land and pyramids to these second sons for governance. After all, even if the second sons did not have the right of inheritance, they were still the sons of these great lords. They also expected their second sons to have a good future and strengthen their own families. So they would definitely support their second sons with some talents and materials to help them gain a foothold in Yunque. In this way, Daenerys took root in Yunque without any effort. And Jack did not want land, he wanted gold, and the countless wealth under the great pyramids of the wise lords. Both sides took what they needed, and a massacre against Yunque's wise lords and the fleeing great lords and good lords began. The screams in Yunque broke through the sky, and there were lootings against slave owners and nobles everywhere. Even some free people and other traders suffered, and the sins in the hearts of countless people were released at this moment. For the enslaved slaves, this was both a sin and revenge. Chapter 105, Slavers Bay is renamed. This bloody looting and massacre lasted until the night. Overnight, Slave Bend changed its name and became the territory of the Dragon family, named the Free Trade Coast by Daenerys. The residents of Slave Bend seemed to have returned to the period of the Dragon King family's rule hundreds of years ago overnight. Jack occupied the largest pyramid and temporarily moved a large amount of wealth from the surrounding pyramids here. Poseidon, who was 7 meters tall, was stationed here like a royal guard. In the sky, Karakshu kept patrolling, alerting all strangers who approached. Even at night, there was still a steady stream of wealth moving into the Great Pyramid, which had been renamed the Great Wave Pyramid. Only 50 of the 2,000 unsullied brought by Jack stayed in the Great Wave Pyramid, and the rest were all sent to plunder the wealth of the pyramid. Not only were there the unsullied's looting results, but there were also many knights who brought rare treasures to Jack. Whether it was the Lazar faction headed by Borhasi or the Myrine faction headed by Abdulaziz, they were very smart to cut off the heads of the wise lords and present some of their rare treasures to Jack. The other part of the rare treasures was left for their queen. As for the vast amount of gold and silver coins, they were pocketed by them and kept for the development of their own territory. After all, Dinariz has a clear price for the heads of nobles of different levels. Even if ordinary soldiers kill nobles, they can still get the title and territory rewards. So when the slaughter is almost done, they basically know what rewards they deserve. Like Borhasi and Abdulaziz, they are basically stable earls. Although there was no specific distinction between titles in the original Slavers Bay, since Dinariz is in power, it is natural to follow the tradition of Westeros. What's more, there is no difference between titles and the distinction between big and small wise lords, and they even prefer Dinariz's model. After all, after the reward, this piece of land will belong to them completely. Time passed by minute, and Poseidon stayed in the giant wave pyramid for 3 days before leaving. Countless people witnessed the existence of Poseidon, and countless people were full of awe for Atlantis. In 3 days, or 4 days to be exact, Jack confiscated wealth worth 9 million gold dragons. Jack had obtained 4 million gold dragons from Astapor, and now the hundreds of years of savings of the wise lords have once again refreshed Jack's cognition. If the total property of the good lords of Astapor was about 15 million gold dragons, then the wealth of young Cai was between 18 million and 20 million. It was hard for Jack to imagine how much money there would be in the Great Pyramid of the Great Lords of Myrine. It was a pity that Dany wanted to govern Myrine, otherwise if she had looted Myrine, she would have made a fortune. Of course, if Jack wanted to overturn the table, the best choice would be to let Poseidon attack the Iron Bank. It is said that the gold coins in the Iron Bank are in the hundreds of millions. But unfortunately, if Jack looted the Iron Bank, the whole world would boycott him. After all, if he could loot the Iron Bank for wealth, he could loot anyone. Therefore, Jack might as well develop Atlantis light and heavy industries. It won't take many years, and I believe it won't take many years to surpass Bravos. After young Cai was conquered, Jack immediately rented a large number of ships to transport the wealth in his hands. Only a few thousand gold dragons were left for the development of the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce to be established. After all, there was already a place in the Big Wave Pyramid. 3,000 gold dragons were enough for other hired manpower. Don't think that the gold dragons are worthless after looting 9 million gold dragons. In fact, the purchasing power of gold dragons is very strong. One gold dragon is equivalent to about 20,000 RMB. These 9 million gold dragons are the savings of more than a dozen slave trade groups in young Cai for hundreds of years. What makes Jack laugh is that the wise lords would rather their gold dragons eat dust in the warehouse at the bottom of the pyramid than take out some to build a real standing army. In the end, they were taken advantage of by robbers, like Jack and Dinariz. Not only the wise lords of young Cai, but also the princes and nobles of the entire Slavers Bay, Essos, and even Westeros are like this. They never have the idea that coins are no different from stones if they are not circulated, let alone such an idea. Although Jack was assigned to Dinariz's camp this time and was destined to be an enemy of the slave city state of Essos, his income was also very objective. The ready-made wealth of 9 million gold dragons also designated Astapor as an overseas colony of Atlantis. It is hard to say whether it is profitable or not to be an enemy of the slave owners of Essos for the ready-made wealth of 9 million gold dragons. After all, Dinariz is pregnant with Jack's child. Although Jack is greedy for money and lustful, he still has to bear the responsibilities he should bear. Jack can't just say that he doesn't acknowledge the existence of this child and then go to explain to the slave owners. Jack's dignity does not allow him to do this, and Jack was unwilling to be an enemy of the slave owners before, just because he wanted to develop steadily. But this does not mean that Jack is afraid of those slave owners. If he really wants to fight, with the current strength of Poseidon, Jack is really not afraid of any encirclement and suppression of the fleet. That's why Jack sent troops to Yunkai without hesitation. Anyway, the slave owners were mainly targeting Daenerys. After repelling Volantis' naval fleet this time, it would be unrealistic for the slave owners to besiege Slave Bay. Because as long as they waited a few years, Daenerys would be able to build a navy of her own. And the dragons would grow up quickly, and Daenerys would firmly control the sea power of Slave Bay. In this way, the threat of the slave owners would only exist when Daenerys' dragons did not grow up. Another 3 days passed, and Daenerys came to Yunkai in person. Inside the giant wave pyramid, Jack saw Daenerys with a bulging belly. At this time, Jack had an indescribable feeling. Although they had the same blood of the dragon family before, Jack had never felt a blood connection. But now that he saw Daenerys for the first time, the feeling of blood connection came to him spontaneously. This feeling was not with Daenerys, but with the child in her belly. The silent heart of the ocean suddenly beat faster, and the feeling of blood connection was very clear. Jack didn't know what to say for a while. Should I call you Sea King or Prime Minister? Why don't you talk? You like to ask me if my period is heavy and if my belly is swollen. Now I ask you, are you surprised? Dany asked with a smile. Jack was speechless for a while. Did you know that you have the ability to get pregnant? Yeah, I knew it the first time I entered the dragon spirit state with Drogon. Daenerys did not hide it at all. After entering the dragon spirit state, Daenerys' menstruation had returned to normal. Okay. Jack didn't know what to say. Daenerys clearly wanted him to have a child. Why did you find me? Wouldn't it be better to help you regain the Iron Throne by marrying a great noble in Westeros? This was not Jack being hypocritical, but after Daenerys became pregnant, he had trouble establishing his heir. Jack's favorite thing was to make Victoria the queen, who would be loyal to him, and didn't have to worry about foreign relatives interfering in politics. But now that Daenerys was pregnant, this meant that, once the child was born, he would be the eldest son. This means that this child not only has the right to inherit the Iron Throne, but also the right to inherit the Sea King. You can't really make Evelyn the queen, right? You as the queen. How can this be said? Chapter 106 varies. There is a conspiracy. Your expression shows that you are worried now. Daenerys said. Is it so obvious? Of course, there is no need for us to talk. I know your ambition very well. I know it, since I learned that you are the king of the sea. You are worried about the issue of succession now. Daenerys took Jack's hand and gently placed it on her belly. It's twins. I can feel it. I can give the firstborn child to you to raise, so you don't have to worry about the issue of succession. Jack narrowed his eyes slightly. If it was really twins, and he raised the firstborn child himself, it would really solve the problem. Because Jack would not need to establish a queen. The main reason for Jack to establish a queen was to have a clear heir, so that the empire could be stable. In this way, Daenerys gave the eldest son to herself to raise. Jack did not need to establish a queen, and the issue of succession was solved. What do you want? Daenerys rolled her eyes at Jack in a charming manner. I'm pregnant with your child. Why are you still so distant? Well, since you said so, I will. I want you to help me take back the Iron Throne, and I won't give you the Vale anymore. Westeros belongs to me, and Essos belongs to you. Seeing that Jack was really going to be rude, Dany immediately interrupted Jack. She divided the two known continents of the Ice and Fire world into two parts just like dividing a cake. I know it. Jack didn't have to think about what else Dany wanted besides the Iron Throne. The Iron Throne is my lifelong pursuit. I'm now the only heir to the Targaryen family. I'm a real dragon, and I must take back everything that the dragon family has lost. Daenerys expressed her ideal, and the Iron Throne is her lifelong pursuit. Originally, she naively told her second brother Viserys that she just wanted to live happily. But since she found out that Viserys was not a real dragon, she suddenly realized that she was the real heir to the Iron Throne. From then on, she took the responsibility of regaining the Iron Throne on herself. I remember you are Rhaegar's sister, right? Jack suddenly said. Daenerys looked at him in confusion. Yes, my eldest brother is Rhaegar Targaryen. It is said that he is the prince in the prophecy, but later it was said that his son is, but unfortunately all his children are dead. Jack nodded. He is dead, but not extinct. The prince in the prophecy may still be alive. In the American TV series, Jon Snow is the son of Rhaegar, whose real name is Aegon Targaryen. He is the real Aegon Targaryen, not the Blackfyre Aegon of the Golden Company. Aegon Targaryen of the Golden Company, or Aegon Blackfyre, is most likely the child of Illyrio and his ex-wife Scylla. In A Dance with Dragons, Little Griffin made his debut, and was called Aegon Targaryen, the son of Rhaegar and the legitimate heir to the Iron Throne. Similar to many speculations, the storyline is that Varys replaced the prince in the Red Keep and smuggled Aegon out of the palace. He grew up secretly in Essos and was handed over to the exiled Griffin, precisely at Varys' suggestion. He pretended to be drunk and died in a foreign land. John Connington and some other people in Westeros were educated. The purpose of education was to make him a perfect heir. It looks very delicate and old-fashioned, but there are still many loopholes. Although there are many matching objective details, including his age and Valyrian appearance, Connington has no conclusive evidence that this Aegon is the other Aegon. All he knows is what Varys said. Valyrian features are not uncommon in the Free Cities, especially Lys and Volantis. In A Song of Ice and Fire, especially in A Dance with Dragons, it is mentioned many times that there are a large number of silver-haired and purple-eyed people in these two places. It was not difficult for Varys and his accomplice Illyrio Mopatis to find such a baby. Give it to someone like Connington who was eager to return to Westeros to find past glory, and then make up a believable story. The most interesting point comes from the conversation between Illyrio and Tyrion. When they set out from Pentos to find Griffin and others, Illyrio revealed 3 important pieces of information. 1. Illyrio was madly in love with his deceased ex-wife, Scylla of Lys. 2. Scylla of Lys had silver gold hair. 3. His relationship with Varys was not simple. This made Jack guess that Aegon Targaryen of the Golden Company was actually the child of Illyrio and his ex-wife Scylla. Then, with the help and planning of Varys, they prepared to really replace the prince with a cat. From the beginning of protecting Daenerys' brothers and sisters, to instigating Viserys to sell Daenerys to the Horse King, all of this step by step was planned by them. As the chief of intelligence, Varys' little birds are all over Westeros and Essos, and he is very clear about the military strength of the 7 kingdoms. The 40,000 Dothraki roaring warriors of Horse King Drogo look very strong, but the Westerlands alone are not something that Horse King Drogo can deal with. The army of the Westerlands is well armed, the soldiers are well trained, and the various arms are well coordinated. It is simply a fantasy to want to take back the Iron Throne by cavalry alone. What's more, once the Horse King lands in Westeros, Westeros will definitely put aside their grievances and unite against the outside world. Therefore, Varys secretly went with the flow, turned a blind eye to Littlefinger's conspiracy, and let the 7 kingdoms be in chaos first. When the 7 kingdoms are almost done fighting, let Viserys land in Westeros with the Dothraki, and the 7 kingdoms that have been consumed again will definitely become a spent force. At that time, the Golden Company will lead the elite to land in Westeros, and with the full side entity, made up by Aegon Targaryen, they can completely ascend the Iron Throne and rule the 7 kingdoms. But the plan went awry. Horse King Drogo was killed by Daenerys' kindness, and his men scattered. Then, before Varys and Illyrio could make the next plan, Daenerys brought back the ancient Sky Overlord who had disappeared for 100 years without warning. So Varys changed the plan again. The dragon has 3 heads in the language, which means that the dragon has 3 riders. They plan to let Daenerys marry Aegon Blackfyre. Aegon has the blood of Blackfyre, so it is reasonable to tame a dragon. Then after Daenerys becomes pregnant and gives birth, they will poison Daenerys to death. In this way, Aegon Blackfyre will be changed from a husband to a king. But Varys' unexpected change appeared again. This change was Jack himself. It was fine if Daenerys could hatch a baby dragon. After all, she was the daughter of the Mad King. But a Blackfyre descendant suddenly appeared, and he was a pirate descendant of Blackfyre. He could get dragon eggs and hatch baby dragons. This made Varys have to suspect that it was a conspiracy of another unknown force. Chapter 107 Disappear or Kill. Jack didn't know what Varys' current plan was, and he didn't care. Perhaps dragons alone couldn't rule the world, because dragons could also be killed by ballistae. But Godzilla could, especially Godzilla, who could start giving birth to offspring in 20 years. Not to mention ballistae. Even if they were given Katyusha rockets, it wouldn't work. Dany's face changed, and her tone unconsciously became tense. What do you mean? Are you saying that my eldest brother still has a child alive? Daenerys' face looked grim. If her eldest brother Rhaegar still had a child alive, then she would no longer be the only heir of the Targaryen family. Not to mention the only heir. And whether Rhaegar's child is a boy or a girl, the inheritance right will be on Daenerys' head. Is that child a boy or a girl? Dany's voice was a little bitter. The boy is the child of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark. He has the blood of fire and ice, a combination of ice and fire, and the Prince of Language. Besides that, Illyrio has no good intentions in protecting you and Viserys. Jack then told Daenerys about Illyrio and Varys' plan, and said, these are just my guesses. After all, I don't know much about Illyrio. After hearing this news, Dany clenched her hands tightly, and her originally pink little fists turned white, because of the Force. Fortunately, Daenerys is no longer the little girl she was back then. She holds 3 dragons and tens of thousands of troops. What's more, Daenerys is not fighting alone now, she also has allies. Jack gently touched Daenerys' silver hair. Don't panic. Since you are not the first heir to the Iron Throne, you can build a real dragon throne yourself and rebuild a Targaryen dynasty. Or I will go to Westeros in person. As long as this child of Rhaegar wears black clothes or disappears, you will be the first heir. You can choose for yourself. If you want the Iron Throne, make a choice, and I will help you clear the obstacles. Jack's words made Daenerys tangled. Looking at the tangled Daenerys, Jack sighed in his heart. Daenerys, who has not yet completely turned black, can never give up the little kindness in her heart. If Jack were Daenerys, he would definitely choose to kill Jon Snow without hesitation. What's more, Jon Snow assassinated Daenerys, who had just won the Iron Throne in the American TV series. Poor Daenerys worked hard all her life, but let Bran Stark ascend the Iron Throne. And in the end, Daenerys' choice was not unexpected by Jack. It's a pity for you to go there in person, but the child is my eldest brother's son after all, so let him go to the wall to serve as the commander of the Night's Watch. This arrangement is not too bad. Jack raised his eyebrows slightly. Have you thought about it? Should you kill him, or let him become the commander of the Night's Watch? Daenerys kissed Jack's lips gently. Well, I've thought about it. The commander of the Night's Watch. He is my eldest brother's child. I can't kill him. Jack pinched Dany hard. Okay, I'll go to the north in person. In fact, Jack is more inclined to kill Jon Snow and directly eliminate him before his identity is revealed. In this way, even if people later accuse Daenerys of sending someone to assassinate Jon Snow, it will be useless. Because Daenerys is the last of the Targaryen family, and Dany can say that this is Jack's own initiative. If she has any objections, she can go to the Seeking of Atlantis to protest. Jack actually wants Daenerys to sit on the Iron Throne, because no matter what, Daenerys is pregnant with his child. That is to say, as long as Daenerys ascends the Iron Throne, Jack's offspring can ascend the Iron Throne. Daenerys rubbed her buttocks and frowned. Even if it is soft, you can't use so much force. What if you break it? Does Volantis fleet need my help? Jack asked again. At this point, Daenerys suddenly remembered the legend of the sea god. What is that sea god? Like a dragon, it is an ancient creature, a little stronger than a dragon, but it can't fly. Jack said in a false way, and at the same time, stretched out his thumb and index finger to gesture. Then can you really breathe in the water? Daenerys' big purple eyes were full of curiosity. Don't you feel that there is something special about the baby in your belly? Daenerys nodded gently when she heard it and did not continue to discuss this topic because the answer was already obvious. Daenerys sighed. Then these 2 children will most likely be able to go up the volcano and down the sea in the future. What do you think of Volantis fleet? Jack asked again. You are not needed. The Cather Pass is completely under our control. In addition, the wise lords of Meereen have been killed by us. If they have endless supplies, they can just waste time with me on the free trade coast. Daenerys said this with a smug look on her face. Ever since she became pregnant, she knew that the free trade coast was definitely not something that the slave owners could block. Both of them knew each other's depths, so Daenerys knew Jack's character very well. Although he seemed out of tune, his bottom line and responsibility were still very high. With Jack's joining, even if he was coerced by the child, she believed that Jack would not watch herself being besieged by the slave owners. Okay, in that case, I'll set off today. Jack was already impatient to go to Westeros. In the American TV series, Daenerys' line can only be regarded as a secondary line, and Westeros is the center of the Game of Thrones. He naturally wanted to see most of the characters that appeared in the series, especially the female characters. Judging from Daenerys' appearance, the main characters in this world are different from those in the American TV series, and only the shadows of the characters in the American TV series can be vaguely seen. Leave tomorrow, stay with me tonight. Daenerys suddenly grabbed Jack's hand. Jack was stunned and glanced at Daenerys' belly. The meaning was self-evident. Daenerys did not speak, but licked her sexy lips gently. Seeing this, Jack said, "Hey, women have misled me, so I will reluctantly stay with you for another night." The next morning, at the dock of Yunque, after Daenerys sent Jack away, she immediately asked her maid Jaqui to call for a court meeting. Missandei was not with her, because Daenerys could not convince Jack with just her mouth. So Missandei had to help, which led to Missandei not waking up yet. Jack drove his own Poseidon to Westeros. He did not even bring the Unsullied, but only 9 royal guards as guards, and 2 personal attendants, Ellie and Jagger. Not everyone in Westeros is an enemy of the dragon family, and there are many allies who can be won over. Chapter 108 Borges' Prospects. At the speed of Poseidon pulling the boat, Jack can reach the narrow sea in about 4 months. Jack is going to Dorne first. The ruler of Dorne, Prince Doran, has never forgotten the humiliation of Elia Martell's death. Prince Doran is a cautious and calm man who never shows his emotions. He has severe gout and has difficulty walking. He tried to remain neutral in the War of the Five Kings, but has revealed his desire to avenge his murdered sister Elia Martell. He rarely appears in public because of gout, and he doesn't want to appear weak in front of his enemies. Doran Nemelis Martell is the Prince of Dorne and the Lord of Sunspear. He is the brother of Oberyn Martell the Red Viper and the father of Irian Martell. In the original book, he sent his eldest son Quentyn Martell to Meereen to try to marry Daenerys, because he has a parchment marriage contract between Viserys and Irian. Irian Martell was his eldest daughter, but later Viserys died. He then tried to get Quentyn Martell to bring Daenerys back, and wanted to support Daenerys to ascend the Iron Throne. But unfortunately, when Daenerys disappeared, Quentyn thought he had the blood to tame dragons, but he was enveloped by Rhaegal's dragon flame, and died 3 days later. There are rumors that it was not the real Quentyn Martell who died, but Jack is not sure what the truth is. But one thing Jack is very clear about is that Doran Martell is definitely not as easy to deal with as in the TV series. Doran originally refused to swear allegiance to Joffrey and considered supporting Renly Baratheon. But then Tyrion Lannister won an alliance with Dorne through 3 conditions. 1. Send Myrcella Baratheon to Dorne to be engaged to his youngest son Trystane. 2. Justice for his murdered sister Elia. 3. Appoint him as a member of the King's Council. But this is only a temporary alliance. Doran Martell and Oberyn Martell are always thinking about taking everything away from Tywin Lannister. Otherwise, Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, would not have risked his life to fight the Mountain after he went to King's Landing on behalf of Prince Doran. He was not doing this for Tyrion Lannister, the disabled lion, but simply wanted to collect some interest first. As a result, he lost his life because of his carelessness for a moment. After Oberyn's death in King's Landing, Doran rejected all suggestions of starting a war for revenge. He returned to Sunspear so that people could see him and know that their prince was still powerful, and kept all of Oberyn's illegitimate daughters, the warlike Sand Snakes, under house arrest to maintain peace. After his daughter's attempt to crown Myrcella failed, Doran revealed to her, in fact, since Celia's death, he has been secretly planning to take away everything Tywin Lannister cares about for 15 years. And he planned for the Martell family to form an alliance with Daenerys Targaryen, and lost his eldest son Quentyn Martell for this. So Jack decided to win over Dorne first, and then go north to the Great Wall to deal with Jon Snow. After Jack set off, the free trade coast and Atlantis ushered in rapid development. Hundreds of sailors disguised as pirates, led by the two brothers Halley and Haley, looted more than 200 merchant ships. All merchant ships were secretly sent to the Seeking Island, and after being painted with a layer of dye, they were transformed into merchant ships of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce. Now the giant wave merchants have become the Imperial Chamber of Commerce, but the overseas bases still use the name of the giant wave Chamber of Commerce. It is equivalent to the Atlantis official setting up a department to regulate the Chamber of Commerce, and Rutger has successfully become the director of the Imperial Chamber of Commerce Department. Today, the number of Atlantis merchant ships has increased to 480, and the population and commodity production of the entire Seeking Island have begun to explode. On the Marine side, Daenerys also organized a siege, and won a great victory. From then on, this pirate group that frightened merchants disappeared, and Astapor quietly gained 500 more navy. Atlantis is now underpopulated, and the demand for the navy is not that great. So Jack let the navy led by Sorge freely absorb sailors for development. Anyway, with Poseidon, the navy does not need much combat power. Jack will set up a military academy on Seeking Island. Wait for the first wave of grassroots officers trained in the military academy on Seeking Island to graduate and directly parachute into the navy. Then replace the navy soldiers with the new generation of Atlantis in a few years. Daenerys, who returned to Meereen, canonized her knights, and the worst ones were all made barons. Those above the Earl are called adults, such as the Duke, the Marquis, and the Earl. Those below the Earl are collectively called knights. A group of young knights composed of second sons. They proudly separated from their fathers, took their belongings to Yunque, and ruled their own territory, because their noble titles were not inherited, but fought for on the battlefield. Their father was also very proud, and gave a lot of stewards and wealth. Daenerys stabilized Yunque very easily, and these nobles who were personally canonized by her would be her loyal supporters. Among them, Borhasi was the most excited, and he was canonized as an earl. From then on, he had his own territory and his own army. He could build armor and weapons in his territory, and then provide them to his tribe, and as the heir of the tribe, his father would support him with all his strength. It can be said that after owning the territory of their group of young nobles of Lazar will have a development speed that surpasses the territory of young nobles of Meereen. Because some of them are the heirs of the tribe, and the other part is also the best second son of the chief of the tribe. So after the canonization was completed, he immediately wrote a letter to his father. The content of the letter can be summarized as follows. Father, I have become an earl. Please support me with talents and materials. Please believe me, and give me 10 years. I will tell the Dothraki clearly that from now on, it will be easy to attack and defend. The invaders can go, and I can go too. After receiving the letter, Borhas's father hesitated for a night without sleeping. He knew his son's ambition and always wanted to lead the Lazar people and the Dothraki people to war. In the end, the old father who had not slept all night convened a tribal meeting, and then everyone unanimously decided to bet on the future of the tribe and fully support Borhas's idea. Borhas's father put all his worth on him. The craftsmen and all teenagers under the age of 18 in the tribe, as well as 70% of the food in the tribe, were all sent to the address left by Borhasi. It was 5 connected manors, as big as a small town. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109, The Shipbuilder Who Is Old Is Not a Treasure. 4 months passed quickly. Jack successfully reached the narrow sea according to the predetermined trajectory, and it would take another 3 days to reach Sunspear. During these 4 months, many major events happened. First of all, the sons of the Harpy in Meereen were completely eradicated. The Lorak family and the Merrick family coincidentally reported other families at the same time. Their 2 families were pardoned by Daenerys, but the other 4 Great Lord families were directly uprooted, and 2 of the pyramids were awarded to the 2 families. In addition, Dany organized her nobles, and participated in the cooperation with the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce, which completely connected Meereen and Yunque. Atlantis also began to buy slaves on a large scale and opened the location of the Seychelles. A large number of merchants bought young slaves in other free trade cities and then sold them on Trident Island, one of the 5 affiliated islands of Seeking Island. Then they took the money from the sale to purchase goods on Crescent Island, which had a large amount of soap, glass, silk and other commodities. But Poseidon Island is still not open to the public, and countless merchants are full of curiosity about Poseidon Island in the center of the archipelago. However, although they are full of curiosity, no one dares to sneak into the scope of Poseidon Island, because it is the nest of the sea god. If you are not an Atlantean, rash entry will only result in shipwreck and death. Now people are skeptical about the sea god of Atlantis. Except for those who have seen Poseidon with their own eyes, others do not believe that there will be powerful creatures older than dragons. Many people have found traces of Godzilla in the waters of the Seychelles Islands. Some of them are bragging or misidentifying creatures. But some merchants really saw Godzilla because Poseidon came back to guard the islands after the Seychelles Islands were announced. At the beginning, Volantis' 300 warships were divided into 2 routes, and 100 of them wanted to rush directly to the Seychelles Islands. As a result, Poseidon, who was driven back, intercepted halfway, and all 100 large ships were torn to pieces, and thousands of people died without survival. All were buried in the belly of fish. This battle shocked the world, and made those who had seen Poseidon realize that the reason why the god of the sea was the god of the sea was not because of the bragging of Atlantis, but because the god of the sea was like a real god. The 200 warships that went to the slave bay to fight suffered heavy losses. In the end, they were ambushed by the merchant ships that Daenerys temporarily rented and modified. In the end, 30 warships were left and hurried away. Daenerys also had her own warships. As for the Karth camel soldiers who originally came to support, they were like a joke and returned halfway. The Volantis did not believe in the legend of the god of the sea. They believed that the 100 warships should be like them, ambushed, and in the end everyone was willing to fight to the end, which led to the annihilation of the army. For this reason, Volantis officially declared war on Myrene and Atlantis, and actively called on other city-states to boycott Atlantis' goods. At the same time, it announced to the outside world that it would organize a huge alliance and then launch thousands of warships to attack Slave Bay and the Seychelles. Although Volantis slogans were loud and there were many responders, such as Karth, Nugis, and Taurus. But in fact, except for Volantis' actions to boycott Atlantis, other city-states were just showing their intentions. Then they did business and invited the giant wave chamber of commerce to settle in, without paying any attention to Volantis' words. Even Volantis itself had many merchants selling Atlantis fine wine, soap, silk, glass and other commodities. After all, although Daenerys shouted to liberate the world's slaves, she obviously did not continue to show for it after occupying the Slave Bay. Although they no longer have the slave trade center of the 3 cities in the Slave Bay, but Essos will naturally have other cities to replace the Slave Bay and become the next Myrene, Yunque, and Astapa. For example, Koha, which is adjacent to the Dothraki Sea. Since the Slave Bay became a free trade coast, all the Dothraki slaves have been sold to Koha. Another example is Nugis. Because Daenerys' goal is the Iron Throne, after occupying the free trade coast, Daenerys did not continue to attack Nugis. Therefore, the slave trade in Nugis has ushered in unprecedented development, and part of the business in Slave Bay has been absorbed by Nugis. The whole of Essos has temporarily calmed down. Taking this opportunity, Daenerys began to accumulate strength to build warships, and also placed a large number of warship orders with Bravos, which also oppose slavery. Bravos had just completed the Order of Atlantis, and then it ushered in Daenerys' order. At the speed of Bravos launching a warship every few days, Bravos can earn at least 2 million gold dragons this time, of which Myrene accounts for the majority. Because Atlantis not only transformed 39 large ships, but also ordered a large number of fast ships. At the time of delivery, hundreds of older shipbuilders were taken away at the price of 200 gold dragons. There are as many craftsmen as you want in Bravos for shipbuilding. As a city-state composed of a large number of small islands, the last thing they lack is shipbuilders. After these hundreds of old shipbuilders were bought, their shipyards could recruit more young shipbuilders in a blink of an eye. and although these workers were not slaves, they were actually the same as slaves in the eyes of the nobles in Bravos. It was just that they needed to pay wages. It was also because of this that these older shipbuilders were experienced one by one. But the wages were high, and the physical strength when working was not good enough. On the contrary, the recruited young craftsmen would have rich shipbuilding experience in just a few years. At the same time, they were physically better and could provide a few more years of strength for the shipyard. So when the shipyards in Bravos heard that Atlantis was recruiting experienced shipbuilding masters, they sold these old workers to Atlantis in the form of outsourcing. These old workers had to sell their property and go to Atlantis with their families. Because Bravos had no shortage of shipbuilders, they had devoted their lives to the shipbuilding industry, and they knew nothing except shipbuilding. This led to no one being willing to recruit the old ones after they became unemployed, and rich experience was not an indispensable advantage. Because the shipbuilding technology is there, it only takes a few years for a young man to become a master. Then he can work for the shipyard for a few more years in his prime. It is much more cost effective than these old men in their 30s and 40s. So they will starve to death sooner or later if they stay in Bravos, so they might as well go to Atlantis and take a gamble. They don't need good treatment, they just hope to get 1/10 of the pie drawn by the Atlanteans. You have to know that the Atlanteans pay them on an annual basis, 13 gold royals a year, and various vacations and benefits. Even if they don't want half, they will be satisfied with 3 gold royals. As for vacations and benefits, they don't care at all, they know it's fake. So on the day Atlantis left Bravos, there were 756 more shipbuilding masters on the ship, as well as their families, a total of 3,000 people. Chapter 110 Westeros Conspicuous Bag. 3 days passed in a flash. Sunspear is the fortress of the Martell family and the capital of Dawn. It is located north of the Greenblood River, on the southeast coast of Westeros, and is surrounded by the sea on 3 sides. The private residence of Prince Dawn, the Flowing Water Garden, is located on the beach 3 leagues west of Sunspear, and a coastal road separates them. On this day, a huge ship of more than 60 meters came towards the dock of Sunspear. Countless merchants and workers busy at the dock stopped to watch the huge ship. Some of the merchants who traveled all over the country recognized the Poseidon at a glance. This is the Poseidon. Why did the Poseidon come to Dawn? Or thin merchants said in shock. Poseidon, is that the name of this ship? Some merchants and porters who didn't know asked one after another. The thin merchant suddenly felt a sense of superiority. He laughed and then said complacently, the Poseidon is the exclusive vehicle of the Poseidon of Atlantis. It is said that the Poseidon always travels on the Poseidon. Moreover, there are no guards on the Poseidon, except for the necessary sailors and 9 royal guards. They are all young and beautiful maids. The interior of the Poseidon is very luxurious. It is said that it is a mobile palace on the sea, and there are rare treasures presented to the Poseidon by others everywhere. After listening to the thin merchant's introduction, someone immediately asked back, you are not lying, are you? There are no guards on the ship, and there is no speedboat following. How can the Poseidon guarantee his own safety? Speaking of this, the thin merchant became excited. That's because you haven't seen the world. The Poseidon can command. Before he finished speaking, a 4 or 5 meter red flag suddenly appeared on the bow of the Poseidon, which was docked. Before everyone could react, a door came, and everyone saw it clearly. That was not a flag, it was clearly a red dragon. Even though they had never seen a dragon in their lives, they knew it was a dragon when they saw Karaku for the first time. The crowd suddenly became chaotic, and a large number of people began to run towards Sunspear. Standing in the crowd, the thin man was in the crowd against the current, and suddenly felt an irrepressible sense of nobility. Then his eyes flashed, and after observing that there was indeed no clip of following the seeking, a bold idea came to his mind. He wanted to take this opportunity to become the Seeking's man. Even if there was a chance that he would be killed by the Seeking's guards to feed the fish, he still wanted to take a gamble. And it was said that the Seeking was very close to the people when he served as Prime Minister in Meereen, so he would not kill him directly, right? At this time, Jack on the deck blew a whistle softly, and Karaku immediately shrank back obediently. Then Jack took Karaku and the royal guards off the boat. He was not in a hurry to enter the city. Although Westeros had guest rights, Jack did not want to enter Sunspear. After all, guest rights are just a decoration. Although they are binding on most nobles, there are also such people as a free family. Although Jack was confident in the reputation of the Martell family, he had no foundation in Westeros and did not bring many guards. As the saying goes, a gentleman does not stand under a dangerous wall. Jack would not cause trouble for himself. All he knew about the Martell family came from movies and novels, and it would be too rash to rashly enter Sunspear. So Jack looked at Sunspear at the dock while waiting for the Martell family. A dragon appeared on the dock, and Doran Martell would definitely send someone to check it out. At this time, Jack was looking at Sunspear. It must be said that Dorne has indeed changed a lot since the Rhoynar came here. Sunspear is built of brown mud and straw. It is located at the easternmost end of a small sandy peninsula, surrounded by the sea on three sides. It is adjacent to the Shadow City to the west. The triple curved wall surrounds the castle and winds through the Shadow City. The three gates arranged in sequence provide a convenient way to the inner city. Visitors can directly pass through the triple curved wall to reach the old palace without having to walk several miles and detour through the maze-like town. The Spear Tower and the Sun Tower rise from the old palace, symbolizing the Spear of Martell and the Sun of Rhoynar respectively. The dark brown sandship, the fortress of the Martell family before Nymeria landed in Dorne, is now part of Sunspear. It looks like a large sailing ship that has been washed ashore and turned into stone, so it is called Sandship. And the Shadow City to the west extends westward in the shadow of the huge curved walls of Sunspear. Adobe shops and windowless huts are attached to the city, and stables, inns, taverns, and brothels are further west, some of which have their own walls. New houses are attached to the walls of their neighbors. This repeats, year after year, until the Shadow City has reached its current size. Although the Dornish call it a city, it is at most the size of a small town, a strange, dirty, and ugly town. The narrow streets in the city are intricate and look like a maze. The market sells spices from Dorne and the eastern part of the world. Dornish houses made of adobe bricks keep cool even in the hot sun. The triple curved wall was built about 700 years ago. Three walls surround Sunspear and wind through Shadow City, forming a defensive partition. Even the bravest enemies will lose their way because of them. It is worth mentioning that there are also three gates, which are heavily guarded and arranged in sequence, providing a convenient way to the inner city. Visitors can directly pass through the triple curved wall to reach the old palace without having to walk for miles and detour through the maze-like town. In addition, there are famous buildings such as the Old Palace, the Spear Tower, the Sun Tower, and the Sandship. Spear Tower. The slender Spear Tower is 150 feet high and has a gilded iron spike on the top, which adds another 30 feet to the tower. The Spear Tower represents the spear of the Martell family. Sun Tower. The sturdy Sun Tower has a golden vault and leaded glass. Under the vault is the throne room, a round room with thick windows and stained glass. The floor was paved with pale marble. There were two almost identical seats on the high platform in the throne room, one of which had the golden spear symbol of the Martell family on the back, and the other had the sun pattern of Rhoynar on the back. As for the old palace and Sandship Castle, they were not very ornamental, but more of a commemorative and symbolic significance. Whether in Jack's impression, or in the history of the Seven Kingdoms, Dorne has always been an eye-catcher. When Aerys II visited Sunspear, he also proposed a wonderful idea to the then Dorne princess. By digging underground canals under the Red Mountains, the abundant water resources of the rainforest could be transferred to the south, to irrigate the desert of Dorne. Jack had to sigh that Aerys II was so smart, that he even thought of transferring water from the north to the south. At the same time, Dorne also had many frictions with the Tyrell family on the border. The border grievances between the two families had a long history, but they rarely broke out into full-scale wars. Chapter 111 Irian Martell 2023-07-24 Author 100 cares without paying attention. Chapter 111 Irian Martell. Time passed by, and Jack didn't have to wait too long. A large number of soldiers suddenly appeared at the dock. A petite woman came to Jack with dozens of soldiers. Jed and the other royal guards suddenly became nervous and unconsciously put their hands on the hilts. The 9 of them were deeply brainwashed by the Atlantis culture. Once a conflict broke out between the two sides, they would not hesitate to sacrifice their lives to protect Jack's safety even if Jack's combat effectiveness was far higher than Th's. And Karakshu instantly straightened his upper body and roared a warning. Now with a wingspan of more than 4 meters, Karakshu is already a behemoth, especially his evil appearance, which adds a bit of deterrence. Karakshu's roar immediately made the soldiers on the opposite side raise their spears and keep panting to suppress their fear. Jack gently raised his right hand. At Jack's signal, Karaxius lay down behind Jack obediently, and the royal guard also put down his right hand on the hilt. Irian Martel also waved her hand, and the Dornish soldiers also retracted their spears. In the first confrontation, Jack had a slight advantage with Karaxius, but it was only a slight advantage. After all, the Dornish had slayed dragons. So although there was some fear, it was not as much as the fear of other countries. Jack and Irian looked at each other, and Jack had to admit that Irian would definitely make people who like black-skinned hot girls unable to extricate themselves. Irian was plump and beautiful, with olive skin, big black eyes, and a head of black and shiny curly hair. She was short like her mother, only 5 feet 2 inches tall. Irian was 20 years old. Although she was noble and very beautiful, she was still unmarried. Irian was calculating, adventurous, and had a hot temper. She will do whatever it takes to get what she thinks she deserves. She has no qualms about using her body to manipulate others and fulfill her wishes. Cereris thinks that she is more like her uncle the Baron than her father, Prince Doran. She thinks handsome men are her weakness, especially when they have an adventurous and taboo temperament. This is the evaluation of Irian Martel that Jack once saw on the website. Irian is like a deadly little female snake, good at manipulating men with her body. By the way, the Dornish are the least populous of the 7 kingdoms. Due to the great migration of the Rhoynar in history and the relative isolation, the Dornish are obviously different from other Westeros people in culture and race. On the basis of their original antals, the Dornish have accepted many Rhoynar customs. The Dornish are known for their passion and sexual openness, and they have always been suspected and hostile by the people of the borderlands of Dorne. Dorne's illegitimate children are given the surname Shad. In Dorne, passion and sex are almost the main themes, which makes Jack think of some Japanese hot-blooded anime he watched in his previous life. But unfortunately, Japanese hot-blooded anime are often accompanied by the sudden appearance of minotaurs, which always catch Jack off guard. Irian also looked at Jack curiously. He had silver hair and purple eyes, and his face was extremely handsome. There was always a faint gentle smile on the corner of his mouth. But when he was with Karakshu, he gave people a sense of danger. Irian licked her lips unconsciously. As she said, handsome men are her weakness, especially men with a little sense of danger. Jack saw the fire in Irian's eyes and was secretly surprised in his heart. The sexual openness of Dorne people is really not covered. However, although Jack likes hot girls with wheat skin, he is not very interested in Irian's ideas. It's not because Irian is not a virgin, or because he is worried that Irian has some unspeakable illness. It was simply because Irian was too cunning. If Irian was as naive as Dina is, and couldn't hide anything, Jack would definitely take the initiative. But if Irian took the initiative to throw herself into his arms, Jack would not refuse. Just like he said, wine and women have led me astray, I will quit drinking today. He quit drinking. What does it have to do with me? I heard that Daenerys is a woman. Who are you to her? Westeros and Essos basically have no information exchange because it takes too long to go back and forth. And Dorne is relatively independent, so Irian has never heard of Jack's information. This is the Jade Sea legend Jack Poseidon, the king of pirates, the father of dragons, the king of the sea, the king of Atlantis, the messenger of the sea god, the shackle breaker, the father of the 7 kingdoms and the protector of the entire realm, the heir of Daenerys. Before Jack could speak, a slightly serious voice suddenly spread. Jack was a little stunned. He swore that he definitely didn't give himself so many titles. At most there was only one Sea King. Irian was shocked by the last sentence. The father of the heir of Daenerys, the guardian of the 7 kingdoms and the whole realm, is also the father of dragons. Doesn't this mean that the guy in front of him can hatch dragons himself, is Daenerys' husband, and already has children? The desire for the handsome man that just arose in Orion's heart disappeared instantly, and her brain began to work rapidly, guessing the purpose of the other party coming to Dawn. Jack looked at the person who was speaking, a thin man who looked like a businessman. The thin man stepped forward and saluted, and then said respectfully, "Lord Seeking, I have heard of your reputation a long time ago. When I saw you today, I found that the description is somewhat inconsistent. You are younger, more handsome, and more majestic than the description." Jack was stunned. "Good guy, you just flatter me right away, right? You make it difficult for me. Yes, the rumors are indeed not as good as mine. You have a good eye. What's your name, and where do you come from?" Shanks. Years of business experience have given him a superb art of talking. But he had never met such a, how should I put it, such a confident person. In fact, he had met such a person, but most of them were not very successful. People of Jack's level would basically be humble, even if it was just for the sake of face. Jack's sudden boasting made Shanks a little unsure of what to say, and he could only follow Jack's rhythm to introduce himself. "Dear Seeking, my name is Shanks. I'm a businessman. I once wanted to join Atlantis, but was rejected." Jack narrowed his eyes, and he immediately understood Shanks's idea, which was nothing more than wanting to join his team, to be more precise, to join the giant wave chamber of commerce. "So do you still want to join the Imperial Chamber of Commerce in Atlantis now?" "Me? Really? Can I really have this honor?" Shanks was very surprised. He didn't expect that his goal would be achieved so easily. "Of course, your name gives you this opportunity, Shanks. What a good name." Shanks was stunned when he heard this, and he didn't quite understand what's wrong with his name. But it doesn't matter. Jack praised his name. Based on this, whoever hears the name Shanks in the future will have to give him face, right? Chapter 112. You are not qualified. The nickname Shanks gave Jack made Irian know Jack a lot more. Jack Poseidon, did you hatch your dragon yourself, or was it given to you by Daenerys? "I hatched it myself. I'm a descendant of Blackfy. Is this important?" Jack was puzzled. Irian nodded. "Of course it is important. This determines our judgment of you. Are you going to see my father?" Irian continued to ask. Irian had already speculated on Jack's purpose. It was likely that he came to form an alliance. Dawn has never forgotten the death of Ilya. Everyone knows about this. If Daenerys wants to regain the Iron Throne, she must win over allies in Westeros. Therefore, the Martell family, who is the in-law of Varys II, became the absolute first choice. Originally, she was going to marry Viserys, but later Viserys died unexpectedly, and Prince Doran restored her position as heir. The ruler of Dawn is called a prince or princess. According to Dawn's tradition, she is the first heir to Dawn. But in order to cover up the marriage with the dragon family, Prince Doran found many seemingly outrageous marriage partners for Irian, such as Old Free. This made Irian think that her father wanted to deprive her of her inheritance rights. She also resented her father for this, and tried to seduce Renly Baratheon and Laura Tyrell. But then Viserys died unexpectedly, and Doran told Irian about it, and secretly began to plan the wedding of Quentyn Martell and Daenerys. But the marriage between Quentyn Martell and Daenerys ended just as it started, because Daenerys had an heir at this time. "There are some things I want to talk to your father about. Can he come out to see me?" Jack went straight to the point. He didn't want to waste time. "I'm the heir of Dawn. Just tell me. I can represent my father." "No, you can't. As you said, you are not Princess Irian yet. I want to see Prince Doran. This is your only chance for revenge. I don't want you to regret missing this opportunity." Irian's face was not very good. Because Doran had always found a marriage partner for her, she hated others saying that she could not represent Dawn. Jack also realized that his words made Irian unhappy, but Jack didn't care. Irian is just a duke's heir. Even if it is Prince Doran, he is just a duke. Jack is a formal emperor, higher than the king. The king can only rule one kingdom, while the emperor is the title of a king, after conquering other kingdoms and completing the centralization of power. Well, Jack named himself the emperor. At present, only the Free Trade Coast recognizes the legitimacy of the Atlantis Empire. But no matter what, Jack can't directly discuss the alliance with Irian Martell. Irian can't represent Dawn. She is not qualified. Jack was too lazy to talk nonsense. He didn't believe that Dawn would give up the opportunity for revenge that Jack mentioned. Irian looked at Jack, who stopped talking and was angry, but Jack was actually right. She was not qualified to make decisions for Dawn now. My father is not convenient to see outsiders. If you want to see him, you can follow me into Sunspear City. My father will receive you personally. Jack narrowed his eyes slightly. I'm afraid not. How do I know if you will murder me? Jack's words made Irian's chest hurt, and the giant panda was so angry that it surged up and down. Humph, if this is your attitude, then you can leave. Dawn will complete its revenge on its own. The Dawnish people have never concealed their thoughts of revenge. Oberyn Martell did not have any fear when facing Tywin Lannister. But this does not mean that Jack's words about the opportunity for revenge will make Dawn tolerate everything. Jack smiled slightly. Don't get excited. I'm a timid person. I just want to ask. Since you all said so, I'm willing to enter Sunspear City, but you have to board my Sea Emperor. Or you are also worried about being killed and refuse to board the Sea Emperor. In this case, I'm afraid there is no need for us to talk anymore. Irian snorted coldly and walked towards the Sea Emperor with a few guards. Jack winked at Go, and Go immediately arranged for the rest of the royal guard to follow. The weak trust between the two sides was maintained by the seemingly childish hostage exchange. Jack himself, holding the trident, walked towards the first gate under the guidance of the woman beside Irian. The one who led Jack was a beautiful girl with blonde hair and blue eyes. Jack had a guess about the girl's identity in his heart. Tyranny Sand? Huh? Do you know me? Tyranny was a little surprised. Tyranny Sand is the illegitimate daughter of Prince Oberyn Martell and a scepter. Tyranny is quite dangerous, although she appears sweet and pious. She is beautiful in appearance, with blonde hair and blue eyes. Her knowledge of poisons is comparable to her father's, and this is also her usual weapon. Jack nodded. I did some research on Dawn before coming here. Tyene blinked her big blue eyes and said in a sweet voice, who is more beautiful, me or Irian? Want to hear the truth? Jack replied with a smile. Of course, I don't like men who lie, even if they are extremely handsome. Tyene's eyes flashed with cunning, and she felt that Jack had been deceived by her sweet appearance. Well, if you are free, I will invite you to the beach, and we will swim while I tell you the answer. Okay, if you have time tonight, I will invite you. I have a great figure. Tyene has already started thinking about what poison to use to teach Jack a lesson. Jack's frivolous tone of teasing a decent woman made her very unhappy. The sand snakes are notoriously cruel, and these illegitimate daughters of Oberyn Martell are not easy to deal with. Soon Jack passed through the triple gates and met Prince Doran. Prince Doran spent most of his time in the Water Gardens. The Water Gardens were the private residence of the ruler of Dawn. It was a palace of fountains and gardens. It was located 3 leagues west of Sunspear on the beach, separated by a coastal road. Prince Melon Martell built the gardens as a gift to his Targaryen bride Daenerys, to mark the union of Dawn and the Iron Throne. Balconies overlooked numerous pools and fountains, shadowed by blood orange trees, and pale pink marble floors covered the gardens and courtyards, passing through rows of carved beams, and through elegant arches. The autumn there was very refreshing. Hot during the day, cool at night, with salty breezes blowing from the sea, fountains and pools. There were many children there too, boys and girls of noble birth. Noble families and families from all over Dawn and all walks of life would send their children to the Water Gardens to be raised. Here, children could play together on the beach, in the pools and fountains. Prince Doran Martell often rested and thought here while watching the children play. Chapter 113 Hatred and interests are also the basis of alliance. As Prince Doran Martell said to Sir Balance I, the Water Gardens were indeed the place he loved most in the world. But he couldn't stay in the Water Gardens all the time. Sometimes he had to go to the study in the old palace to deal with some things. Father of Dragons? Prince Doran put down the book in his hand. Have you heard of my name? Jack was surprised. I heard some news that some merchants would travel back and forth between Westeros and Essos, but I didn't confirm your identity until it crawled in. As he said, Prince Doran pointed behind Jack. Jack looked back and found that Carrax was stuck between the door frames of the study, and Go was also blocked outside the door by Carrax. Carrick's did not go through the triple door, it flew in from the sky. After Jack entered the old tower, Carrick suddenly became a little anxious and rushed in directly, but was stuck in the door frame of the study, and Go, who was guarding the door, was helpless. Jack's face was a little ugly. He didn't expect that it was Carrick's that embarrassed him in the end. "I'm sorry, Prince Doran, I'm a bit impatient." Prince Doran shook his head, then asked the guards around him to split the door frame, and then Carrick's ran out. After being freed, Carrick's immediately came to Jack and stared at the guards behind Prince Doran. Jack touched Carrick's head, and Carrick's, who was comforted, calmed down. Prince Doran allowed Carrick's to break in, not because he trusted Jack too much, but because the old tower was surrounded by soldiers at this time. If Jack attacked him, Jack would definitely be chopped into meat paste by Dawn's soldiers. So at this time, force became the basis for the two to maintain trust. Seeing that Carrick's had regained his composure, Prince Doran motioned Jack to sit down. "You have come all the way from Essos. You should be here to win over Dawn." Prince Doran stated Jack's purpose. "Yes, I'm saddened by what happened to Lady Elia Martel, and I know you have never given up on revenge. So I have come, with the will of the true master of the Iron Throne, to help you get revenge." Prince Doran was not excited by this, but said calmly, "I once tried to let Orion marry Viserys, but he is dead, and now Daenerys is pregnant with your child, so there is no possibility of marriage." Nothing in Sunspear City can escape the eyes and ears of Prince Doran, naturally including the conversation between Orion and Jack at the dock. Alliance does not necessarily require marriage, it can also be based on hatred and interests. Jack picked up the wine on the table, Poseidon's brew. It only costs 6 gold royals to purchase in Atlantis. Prince Doran was a little surprised. 6 gold royals? Yes, 6 gold royals, I'm sure. But I spent 98 gold royals, and I think that, although it is delicious, it is about the same as the fine wine in Dawn. 98 gold royals? Jack was very surprised. This thing is the lowest level of Poseidon's brew. How do you know? Prince Doran patted his forehead lightly. "I almost forgot that you are the king of Atlantis. Yes, this is the benefit I mentioned. We can cooperate, and Atlantis will build a factory in Dawn. The quality of life of the people of Dawn will be unprecedentedly improved, and the tax revenue of the Martel family will increase several times. Perhaps you will have to expand the dock by then, because the number of merchants coming and going will increase several times. As for hatred, I don't think I need to elaborate too much. If there is anyone in the world who hates Lannister and Baratheon the most, I think it is no one, except Martel and Targaryen. But an alliance without blood relationship is unreliable, isn't it?" Doran stared into Jack's eyes. "Dawn has lost a lot. How can I trust you? Once you agree to form an alliance with Daenerys, it means that all the families in Westeros will be Dawn's enemies now." "Prince Doran, I think you misunderstood one thing. We have 4 dragons, tens of thousands of troops, and endless golden dragons and endless food. We don't need Dawn to take back the Iron Throne. But we want to be more relaxed, and want to avenge all those who have been harmed by the Lannister and Baratheon families. Do you understand what I mean? It's an alliance, but it's more of a submission. So whether we can be reliable depends on whether your oath of allegiance is solid." Jack's words made Prince Doran fall into silence. He likes peace, but he wants to avenge his sister more. For this reason, his younger brother Oberyn Martell has set off for King's Landing to attend Joffrey's wedding. King's Landing is a purgatory full of hatred and conspiracy, but for Oberyn, it is a paradise of revenge. Perhaps because of Jack's travel through time, the timeline of the Ice and Fire world has deviated slightly. The Purple Wedding, which was supposed to take place in the 300th year of the Egan calendar, has now been postponed for 2 years, and will be held in January 302. The Blood Wedding took place in the 301st year of the Egan calendar, and the Blood Wedding was the last straw that broke the camel's back. In this massacre, Robb Stark, the King of the North, his mother Catelyn Tully, and most of his 3,500 soldiers were brutally killed. After the battle, Free cut off the heads of Robb and his direwolf Grey Wind, and sewed Grey Wind's head to Robb's body, to mock the connection between Robb and his direwolf. The Frees also cut Lady Catelyn's throat, stripped her clothes, and threw her into the Trident River, to mock the Tully family's custom of water burial. The incident originated from Robb Stark's betrayal of his marriage contract with the Free family, and Lord Walder Free regarded this as an insult to the Free family, so he carefully planned the massacre. Lord Tywin Lannister manipulated this incident behind the scenes. His secret support gave Walder Free the protection and courage to violate the sacred guest rights. Since the bloody wedding, Winterfell has changed hands again. The sea monster flag of the Greyjoy family no longer flies, and it has been replaced by the red flare flag of the Bolton family. Roose Bolton was named the Duke of the North, but he was not recognized by the nobles and civilians in the North. The Stark family has ruled the North for 8,000 years, and its influence on the North cannot be dissipated overnight. Walder Free also gained many benefits from this, including granting Reverin to Jenna Lannister's husband Aemon Free. At the same time, this incident completely destroyed the last bit of honor of the Free family, because they tarnished one of the oldest and most sacred traditions in Westeros, the guest rights. After this, the Free family was resented and hostile by most of the families in Westeros, including their allies. In addition, although no family wanted to break this right again, this incident still had a lasting negative impact on this ancient right, because in a strange castle, the safety of guests is no longer so completely guaranteed. For example, if Jack was not strengthened by Caraxu and the serum, he would not choose to enter Sunspear, even if Irian Martell was a hostage. Chapter 114. Two Pitiful Princesses. The room fell into a long silence. Caraxu seemed to be impatient and let out an irritable roar. Scarlet sparks erupted from its mouth. Caraxu interrupted Prince Doran's meditation. He looked at Caraxu's huge body and suddenly asked, "How old is it?" 2 years old, born in 300 AC. I got it in 299 AC. At that time, it was still a fossilized dragon egg. I was going to sell it. If Caraxu was born a little later, Jack might really sell it. Because at that time, Jack never guessed that he was a descendant of Blackfire, let alone thought that he would hatch a baby dragon. 2 years. Doran sighed. 2 years was such a huge time. When it comes to understanding dragons, the Dornish are definitely second to none except the Targaryen family. They fought against dragons for a long time and even killed them. Jack saw Doran's eyes and understood what he was thinking, so he immediately said, yes. He was as big as a palm when he was born, and he is growing faster and faster. He is a very magical creature. Prince Doran was silent for a while and said, Doran can be loyal to Daenerys, but before what you said is realized, Dorne will not risk publicly announcing its support for Daenerys. Prince Doran chose the safest way, seeing the rabbit first, and then casting the eagle. He had long had the idea of marrying the Targaryens. If Irian married Viserys, or Quentyn married Daenerys, any marriage would allow Doran to publicly support the dragon family. But now Jack has only given Dorne a big pie. As for revenge, that is part of his job. Even if it is not for the purpose of gaining Dorne's loyalty, the Targaryens will also seek revenge and restore their country, so revenge is not a promise. Jack also knows that he cannot scare Doran, the old venomous snake, by just drawing big pie. Doran is not as indecisive and cowardly as in the TV series. In that case, then it's settled. I will let Atlantis build a factory in Dorne, and even make ice cubes for sale, so that the nobles can enjoy it. But I hope that when Daenerys arrives at Dragonstone, you can directly raise an army, and declare your loyalty to the dragon family. Can you do it? Prince Doran smiled rarely. The Dornish never break their promises. As long as Daenerys fights back to Westeros, we will definitely follow. Prince Doran emphasized the pronunciation of fight back, which is to tell Jack that he will only send troops if Daenerys really decides to take back the Iron Throne. Otherwise, when Daenerys went to Dragonstone for a walk, he foolishly declared his allegiance to Daenerys. Wouldn't other kingdoms have to eliminate him, the dragon family's ally, first? Jack also expressed no objection to this. Compared with Dorne's support for Daenerys, he was more concerned about building factories. Conquering a force is not just about force. Just like Jack's previous idea of Astapor, he can completely conquer Dorne, economically a place that the dragon family can only conquer by marriage. Use Dorne's cheap labor and raw materials to produce goods, and then sell them to nobles in Dorne, River Bay and other places at a high price. In this way, not only is the profit of the product very high, but it also saves a lot of transportation costs. The conversation between the two sides ended happily. Doran Martel was limited by the limitations of the times, and Jack easily obtained the right to build factories in Dawn on a large scale on the grounds of Daenerys' restoration of the country. After Jack got Doran Martel's promise, he got up and prepared to leave. Prince Doran personally sent Jack to the door of the old palace. "I'll take you here. The enemies of the Martel family are everywhere. I don't want others to see me like this." Jack nodded and said sincerely, "Gout is really painful. I'm deeply sorry for this. I hope you can walk on this passionate and romantic land again one day." Prince Doran smiled. "If you hadn't married Daenerys, I would have wanted to marry Aerion to you." To be honest, compared to Daenerys, whom he had never met, Doran Martel felt that Jack's ability and future were much better than the mother of dragons. Jack slandered in his heart, "You old thing, I gave you my sincere blessing, but you let me marry a venomous snake home, repaying kindness with hatred, right? Aerion is definitely one of the most dangerous women in the Seven Kingdoms, not much weaker than that scheming little rose." After the two said goodbye, Tyene took Jack back to the dock. On the way, Tyene sweetly asked, "Lord Jack, I have prepared a beautiful swimsuit. Why don't you stay for a night?" Tyene's voice was very soft, and she looked as lovely as a summer strawberry. Her mother was a nun, which made Tyene have an innocence that was almost not of this world. If Jack hadn't read the original book, he would have been easily deceived by this sweet appearance. "I don't want to be poisoned by you while swimming with you and then die with a hideous face. This is too terrible," Jack said with an exaggerated expression. Seeing this, Tyene immediately put away her sweet smile. It seemed that Jack was always on guard against her, so she didn't need to continue pretending. After the two arrived at the dock, Jack asked the royal guard to bring Princess Aerion down. "I had a pleasant conversation with your father. Your father is much more stable than you." Just as Jack was talking, a fleet docked at the dock, and the people getting off it aroused Jack's interest. Because all the people getting off the ship were Dawn's guards, and the last one to get off was a little girl. Jack couldn't help but look at the girl's golden curly hair and milky white skin. It was rare to see such a beautiful girl. Then a soldier came forward to report. After hearing the soldier's report, Jack knew that the girl was Myrcella Baratheon. In order to win the support of Dawn, Tyrion Lannister sent Myrcella Baratheon to Dawn to marry Doran Martel's youngest son, Trystane Martel. But they first went to Bravos to meet with Dawn's guards, and then returned to Sunspear. Jack didn't expect such a coincidence that he met Myrcella here. Myrcella, like Joffrey and Tommen, is a child of Cersei Lannister and her younger brother Jaime Lannister, not Robert Baratheon's child. But Myrcella did not inherit Cersei's viciousness like Joffrey, nor was she as weak and indecisive as Tommen. She inherited her mother's beauty, but not her character. She is kind, polite, and wise, like a noble and elegant lioness. She and Shireen Baratheon are known as the two most regrettable princesses in Game of Thrones. Shireen Baratheon is the daughter and only heir of Stannis Baratheon, but she was disfigured by grayscale. Later, Stannis sacrificed his daughter to the Red God. In Jack's view, when Stannis sacrificed his daughter, he completely lost the battle for the throne. Chapter 115. A good move suddenly came to hand. Jack's thoughts flowed in his mind, and then he said to Aerion, "I want to take Myrcella Baratheon away. Your father has pledged allegiance to Daenerys, and can no longer marry the Baratheon family." Jack took Myrcella away, on the one hand, to prevent the Tyrell family from marrying the Baratheon family. On the other hand, he didn't want Myrcella to stay in Sunspear City. Since he met her, Jack had no reason to let her go. It was just a matter of convenience. He could also have one more Cersei's most beloved daughter as a hostage, so why not do it? Aerion picked up the whip directly after hearing this. In her opinion, Jack was simply bullying too much. But at this moment, a guard suddenly came to the dock and whispered something in Aerion's ear. Aerion snorted coldly, took back the whip, and asked the soldiers to hand Myrcella over to Jack's royal guard. Prince Doran was eager for Jack to take Myrcella away. Today's coincidence gave Doran Martel a great opportunity. If Jack didn't take Myrcella away, then Trystane would marry Myrcella. In this way, even if the Martel family fails in revenge in the future, there will still be a bloodline left. If Jack takes Myrcella away, Prince Doran will spread the news that Daenerys' people have kidnapped Princess Myrcella. The body of the kidnapped Myrcella must be unclean, and he uses this as an excuse to end the marriage. This will not only prevent Baratheon from polluting the Martell bloodline, but also show goodwill to Daenerys. At the same time, it is also convenient to turn against Lannister and Baratheon in the future. Otherwise, they clearly reached an alliance through marriage before, but when Daenerys Targaryen came, they turned their faces and refused to recognize people, which would be looked down upon. And if Jack takes Myrcella away, the eyes of the whole Westeros will be focused on Jack, and Dorne will have more time to deal with the upcoming war. Soon Jack left the Sunspear dock with the confused Myrcella. Shanks was left in Sunspear by him to receive the subsequent members of the Big Wave Chamber of Commerce. When leaving, Jack slapped Tyrion and Tyene on the buttocks, one for each. Well, Tyrion's was more elastic, and Tyene's was softer. These two slaps made Tyrion and Tyene extremely ashamed and angry. In Dorne, which is famous for its passion and sexual openness, the two sisters were not ashamed or angry. It was Jack's teasing and disdainful attitude that made them feel humiliated. But fortunately, they still maintained a trace of rationality and did not get carried away by anger. Otherwise Carracks would definitely burn them into charcoal. After Jack left, the news that the father of dragons visited Dorne and conspired with Doran Martell in the old tower spread. This matter could not be concealed because Jack did not hide it at all when he landed, which was also Jack's deliberate act. His original idea was to draw the attention of the Iron Throne to Dorne, just like when Daenerys was pregnant and tied Jack to her pirate ship. He wanted to use this method to tie Dorne to the dragon family ship. Unfortunately, Myrcella's unexpected appearance interrupted Jack's plan. Doran Martell directly announced to the public that Myrcella was taken away by a man of Targaryen blood. At the same time, it was stated that Princess Myrcella was taken away by a strange man, and her engagement with Trystane was automatically cancelled. Soon, ravens were sent out from Sunspear City, some from the Martell family and some from other forces. In short, everyone's attention shifted from whether Doran and the dragon family would form an alliance to how to find Princess Myrcella. Jack had already predicted that Prince Doran would use this incident to divert other people's attention. Otherwise Prince Doran would never let Jack take Myrcella away. You know, Cersei loves this daughter very much. Once Joffrey and Tommen die, Cersei's paranoid love for the child will be completely occupied by Myrcella. At that time, Jack said, "Queen Mother, you don't want your daughter to have any accidents, right?" It doesn't ask to completely control Cersei Lannister, but it will definitely make Cersei Lannister lose her sense of proportion. It can be said that Myrcella is not only more likable to Jack, but also a very good chess piece. As for whether it will change the future timeline or bring trouble to himself, Jack doesn't care. Myrcella and Shilling, as well as the domineering little bear girl Lyanna Mormont, are all regrettable characters. Although Jack will not make a special trip if he encounters them, he will definitely not sit idly by. Since he has become a time traveler, is he still afraid of changing the plot? Moreover, after 3 years of not seeing him, he is no longer the original Mixture Jack. For some reason, Poseidon is growing faster and faster now, with a body length of 15 meters and a tail of 26 meters. This is obviously beyond the growth rate in the original system description, and it has suddenly begun to accelerate. Perhaps it is because the nuclear radiation of the planet in the world of ice and fire is stronger? Jack is not very clear. But Jack can be sure that Poseidon is very healthy, and it feels to Jack like a 3-year-old baby who suddenly has the body of a 7-year-old baby, but is still 3 years old. In any case, the 15-meter-long Poseidon is enough for Jack to deal with all the dangers in the game of rights, including the three-eyed crow Brynden Rivers. At the beginning, the system absorbed the gods of the ice and fire world, but did not start with some extraordinary creatures, such as the three-eyed crow and the Night King. Both of them are creatures with extraordinary abilities, but they have not reached the level of becoming gods, so they are lucky to have a life. A month has passed since Jack left Yangji City. At this time, Jack is in a dream. Jack, who has not dreamed for a long time, began to dream frequently after getting closer to the north. This time Jack appeared in a huge forest, and an old man appeared in front of him. In the past dreams, Jack was always able to stay awake, and the nightmare-like whispers in his ears were always driven away by the roars of Karakshu and Poseidon. At that time, Jack realized that this was the whisper of the three-eyed crow, but because Jack's consciousness was connected with Karakshu and Poseidon, especially Poseidon, he was completely connected with Jack. So every time the whispers with bewitching meaning appeared, most of them were dispelled by the roar of Poseidon. This time, the other party obviously did not intend to hide himself anymore, but showed up directly. Jack looked around, then chose a stone to sit on, and asked tentatively, "Green seer, three-eyed crow?" The old man said calmly. Jack's face remained unchanged, and he suddenly remembered some details of the original book. These details were not discovered by him reading the original book, but by the big boss of the forum. In the original book, Bran asked Bloodraven if he was the three-eyed crow, but Bloodraven looked confused. So it is very likely that Bloodraven Brynden Rivers is a green seer, but the three-eyed crow is someone else. Of course, these are all speculations, and there is no final conclusion on who the three-eyed crow is. But from the current point of view, the person opposite is the three-eyed crow, not the green seer Bloodraven. You don't belong here. I haven't seen you in the past. You should have died on that sea. I found that the extraordinary realm still cannot be bypassed, so I simply wrote a few chapters to take it over. The extraordinary realm of Game of Thrones is not written in detail in the original book. After all, the original book has not been finished, so I wrote it myself. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, The Power of Faith. Jack raised his eyebrows slightly. You know I should have died at sea, but you still say you can't see me in the past? You are from the future? Not now. The old man's expression did not change, but Jack clearly felt that the atmosphere around him had changed. Obviously, he was right. Jack wanted to test it, but the old man had lost his patience and turned into a huge crow that covered the sky. There was a strange eye on the crow's head staring at Jack, and then the crow screamed shrilly and stabbed Jack with its sharp beak. Jack did not panic. The ground under his feet suddenly cracked, and an absurdly large Poseidon drilled out from the ground. The three-eyed crow was only as big as its head. Poseidon roared like thunder, opened his bloody mouth and bit the three-eyed crow. Shock and fear flashed in the crow's eyes, and then half of its body was torn off, and it left Jack's dream in a hurry. But Jack did not relax because of this. Because the Poseidon at this time was not the same as the Poseidon in Jack's impression. First of all, the size was too big. Even the three-eyed crow with a wingspan of hundreds of meters is only as big as Poseidon's head. Jack floated in front of Poseidon and asked uncertainly, "Poseidon?" Jack knew that he could summon the adult Poseidon in his dream, which came from the spiritual connection between him and Poseidon. Poseidon had undergone a systematic transformation, and his spirit after adulthood was set according to the high magic world, and was not inferior to the extraordinary creatures in the ice and fire world. It was also because of this that Jack had no fear when facing the three-eyed crow. However, the Poseidon in front of him was too wrong. Not only was he huge, but he was also wrapped in a lot of blue-white and milky white mist energy. There was a huge bronze coffin behind him, and the chains composed of blue-white energy were tightly wrapped around the bronze coffin, fixing it on Poseidon's back. Especially after swallowing half of the body of the three-eyed crow, a lot of mist began to fill the dream. Then, before Jack could react, Poseidon disappeared. Jack was getting more and more sleepy in the blue-white energy mist, and finally fell into a deep sleep. At the same time, Poseidon was sleeping soundly at the bottom of the waters of the Seychelles. He had a strange dream for the first time. In his dream, he was in a vast galaxy. Then countless light spots of different sizes covered the galaxy like stars. From small dust to large watermelons and basketballs, they were densely packed. And each light spot extended a light as thin as a hair, and the end was connected to himself. Poseidon curiously touched a light spot the size of a basketball with his little paw. The light spot suddenly grew larger, and became a light curtain. A picture appeared on the light curtain, which was a huge temple with incense and tributes everywhere. At this time, a young woman was kneeling on the ground, her face full of despair and hope. Two completely different expressions appeared on a person, and next to the woman was a newly born premature baby. The premature baby's face did not have the agility and curiosity that a baby should have, but was full of dullness and paleness. Just when Poseidon curiously wanted to click on the next small light spot, a message suddenly appeared in his mind. "Oh, omnipotent Poseidon, please help my child. I don't ask her to be smart, I just ask her to be able to breathe and eat like ordinary people." The woman's name is Ashley, and she is a famous seamstress on Poseidon Island. But one of her children is a premature baby, born more than a month early. In this regard, the most authoritative and experienced doctors in the Atlantis Empire Hospital are powerless, and said that it would be good if the child could be born alive, and it is basically impossible to survive for 3 days unless they can develop the oxygen inhalation device that Poseidon once proposed, but that is still far from enough. So the hospital's suggestion is euthanasia, to prevent the child from dying in the slow process of hypoxia. Even if he can survive, he will be a mentally disabled child. Or take the child to the temple of Poseidon to pray. Maybe the Poseidon can bring down a miracle and make the child healthy again. Ashley had no choice but to hurriedly take the child to the temple of Poseidon to pray. Poseidon is very wise. Although he sympathizes with the mother and daughter, he can't help much. But at this moment, a milky white energy suddenly emerged in Poseidon's body. At the moment when the energy emerged, Poseidon instinctively understood what this milky white energy was, where it came from, and how to use it. The milky white energy is actually the power of faith. This energy will be born when there are more people who believe in it, and it is sincere enough. The stronger the body and soul of the person who is believed in, the easier it is to sense the power of faith. Each light spot is a believer, connected by the line of faith, and the believer's power of faith will be transmitted to Poseidon through the line of faith. The stronger Poseidon's physique and mental strength are, the higher the efficiency of transmission. The power of faith is a panacea. The most direct use is to strengthen oneself, condense the godhood, and become a god with endless life. It was the first time to use this energy, and Poseidon didn't know how much to use. He simply condensed a milky white energy ball as big as the original basketball-sized light spot. The milky white energy ball fed back to the light curtain along the line of faith. The statue of Poseidon in the picture burst into a strong light, and then a large number of white light spots rushed to Ashley's daughter Charlotte. Poseidon suddenly widened his eyes and quickly took back a large amount of faith power. Because he didn't know the specific situation of the power of faith, he almost drowned the little girl. Fortunately, he took back the power of faith in time. At this time, there were still many people worshipping in the temple. The sudden white light made everyone dumbfounded and could only kneel down in panic. When everything returned to calm, the girl who was originally sick due to premature birth now not only had a lively look in her eyes, but also restored her healthy milky white color. Then in front of Poseidon, the light curtain suddenly expanded into a white sphere with a diameter of 1 meter, slowly emitting a milky white halo. Poseidon felt a very pure impression power coming, at least 10 times that of what he had just used. Then Poseidon connected 2 other light curtains one after another, and began to try to control and understand the power of faith. As Poseidon took the initiative to absorb the power of faith, a trace of blue-white energy appeared. This energy is a small part of the milky white change, from the word thunder in Poseidon's name. Atlantis prefers to call Poseidon the god of the sea and thunder. So these blue and white energies can help Poseidon control the power of thunder, but they are too scarce at present, and in reality they can only make people numb for a while. So far, Poseidon has completely enjoyed himself in the Faith Galaxy. Anyway, he can last a long time after eating once. Chapter 117 Bloodworms. Poseidon was having a great time in the Faith Galaxy, but Jack was uncomfortable. 3 days had passed, and Jack was still absorbing the blue-white energy mist in his sleep. At this time, he had woken up in his dream, and there was still a lot of misty energy around him. At this rate, it would take at least half a month to absorb it all. The most uncomfortable thing was that he was already saturated, and his consciousness would be blown up if he absorbed more. He could sense the situation outside at this time. Karakshu had been protecting his body, and no one could get close to him. Jack himself didn't know whether his body, which had been strengthened by the serum, could withstand 15 days of not eating or drinking. Sensing Karakshu who was lying beside him to protect him, Jack suddenly had a bold idea in his mind. Then Jack concentrated his mental power and tried frantically to connect with Karakshu. Karakshu, who was already highly alert, suddenly jumped up and roared a warning. "It's me, Karakshu." A vague voice appeared in Karakshu's mind. Although the voice was very vague, Karakshu recognized the owner of the voice at the first time. "Relax, kid, follow my instructions." Karakshu slowly calmed down, and soon, a 200-meter long blood-red dragon appeared in Jack's dream. The surrounding blue-white mist energy seemed to have found an outlet, and rushed towards Karakshu's huge body frantically. "Ang!" Karakshu roared in a shocking voice, and the voice became much thicker. Soon there was still a trace of energy left in the surrounding space, but Karakshu stopped absorbing it. Jack's mind moved, and these energies gathered together to the size of a fist. Jack didn't want to waste the remaining energy at all. After absorbing this energy, it can not only slowly strengthen the physique, but also strengthen the 5 senses and mental power of a person. At this time, Jack turned his eyes to Je, who was guarding the door in the real world. Because Karakshu didn't let others get close to Jack's body, Je guarded the door for several days, almost without sleeping or eating. In his opinion, Jack was like his reborn parent, but now Jack has unknowingly become a vegetable under his protection. Therefore, Je blamed himself very much, and couldn't sleep at night or eat. His spirit was on the verge of collapse, and then he suddenly leaned back, and fell heavily to the ground. Seeing this, Jack no longer hesitated, and directly invaded Je's brain with his enhanced mental power. In Je's soul world, there was nothingness and ruin. There was only a luxurious palace in the center, and there was a throne in the center of the palace. On the throne was Jack Poseidon. Under the throne was Je kneeling on the ground, with his head tightly pressed against the ground. He seemed very ashamed, and did not dare to look at the person on the throne. "Hey," holding the trident of Poseidon, "you are quite handsome." The sudden voice made Je, who was kneeling on the ground, raise his head. At this time, Je's soul was full of sluggishness, and just kept shaking. Seeing this, Jack immediately dragged Je's soul into his dream, or his own soul world. Jack merged the fist-sized energy in his hand into Je's body, and the blue-white energy suddenly turned green. After the power of faith is absorbed, it will turn into different colors, such as Jack's sea blue and Karakshu's blood red. And when it comes to Je, it turns green. At this time, Je's soul also woke up, and looked around in shock. "Your Majesty, Jack made a gesture to silence. "Don't say anything. Don't ask anything. You are my capable guard. I naturally can't watch you die suddenly." Then Jack's mind moved, and the dream was broken. Jack, Karakshu, Je and the dragon all woke up. The two just woke up, and were frightened by Karakshu's sudden roar. "Fuck, Karakshu, what's wrong with you?" Karakshu jumped up and down as if in pain, and at the same time, accompanied by painful howls, scales began to fall off, and the body size began to surge. The painful howl made Jack swallow his saliva, and unconsciously touched his skin. Obviously, Karakshu had undergone unknown changes because he absorbed too much blue and white mist energy. This blue and white faith energy directly acts on the soul, and can significantly improve a person's physique. But like Karakshu, it seems that some unknown qualitative change has occurred. Karakshu quickly destroyed everything from the cabin, and finally came to the deck and kept rolling. Jack instantly entered the dragon spirit state. After being blessed by the blue and white faith energy, Jack could also enter this dragon spirit state. The dragon spirit state is no different from Daenerys' dragon spirit state, except that Daenerys was born with this potential and talent, while Jack forcibly raised his talent through external energy. As soon as he entered Karakshu's consciousness, an unbearable pain came, like crushing the tendons and bones for a forging. The severe pain made Karakshu directly squeeze Jack's consciousness out. Jack, who was kicked out, turned pale. Fortunately, Je stepped forward to support Jack, otherwise he would have collapsed to the ground. Fortunately, this state did not last too long, only half an hour. Karakshu roared to the sky, and vented to his heart's content. At this time, Karakshu's body size had reached 9 meters, directly doubling. The most important thing is the scales and forelimbs. Although the scales were said to be scarlet blood color before, the color is not that deep, and it is also very rough, mixed with brown and black. Now it has become a real scarlet color with a metallic luster. The biggest change is the forelimbs. The huge bone claws of the forelimbs have fallen off and turned into 5 claws that can grasp. At this time, Karaku's eyes revealed agility, as if he had become smarter in an instant and figured out a lot of things. Looking at the huge Karaku, Jack's eyes flashed with excitement. It can already bear his weight. Originally, in Jack's prediction, Karaku only needed to grow to 5 meters to carry Jack to fly, but now it has grown directly to 9 meters. No problem at all. You know, Daenerys can now fly on Rogan. He and Daenerys had done experiments at the beginning. Karaku needs 5 meters for Jack to ride a dragon, while Drogon only needs more than 4 meters to carry Dany, who weighs 100 kilograms, to take off. With Drogon's talent, it has to be more than 5 meters now. Sometimes Jack would envy Dany and look forward to Carrick's growing up quickly, but he didn't expect that the three-eyed raven would make him fly freely ahead of time. The three-eyed raven is definitely not the blood raven. The blood raven is a green prophet. The three-eyed raven is also a green prophet, but it is not only a green prophet, but also not a green prophet of this era. But now all these have to be put aside. Jack came to Carrick's with a little excitement. Just like the first time he went diving with Poseidon, Carrick's took the initiative to bend down and let Jack climb on his back. Chapter 118 Overlord of the Sky. With Karakshu's iconic swinging to Kiev, Jack set foot in the sky that was originally out of reach. Jack was born on land in his previous life and on the sea in this life. Later, he set foot in the deep sea with the heart of the ocean, and now he set foot in the sky with Karakshu. Jack seems to have become the master of land, sea and air, giving him a feeling that the world is in his hands. This feeling is not the kind of dominance after conquest, but a higher level, making Jack feel that he is in control of the planet. At this time, Poseidon is still sleeping. If Poseidon wakes up, Jack will understand what these blue and white mist energies are. Jack thought that these mist energies were transformed from the soul power that Poseidon tore off from the three-eyed crow. It is these powers of faith that give Jack an illusion of control over the planet. But if Jack spreads the faith of the sea god to all parts of the world, it will be possible to control the world. Before the King of Light R'hllor was absorbed by the system, he was planning the battle of ice and fire, and then harvesting the faith of the world. The power of faith is essentially a higher level of energy than magic. If the gods want to improve their strength, they can only rely on the power of faith, and magic is useless. For example, the changes that Korax has undergone. Korax's scales can now block even the dragon crossbow, and the dragon flame has changed from the burning of flames to splash damage similar to napalm. Today's Korax reminds Jack of a dragon in a movie, the dragon guarding the Golden Mountain. Smog. Korax, hurry up, faster, I can still bear it. Ang, Korax roared, and rushed directly into the clouds, speeding up. The biting cold wind blew on his face, but Jack felt unprecedented pleasure instead of discomfort. The sea is like an abyss. The darker it gets as you go down, the stronger the sense of oppression. But the sky is different. This kind of vast vision, the feeling of overlooking the earth, is completely two extremes. Jack grabbed Korax's neck tightly, and he must have someone make a dragon saddle when he goes back. There is no bone spur on the back of Karakshu like the one on Rogan's back. If Jack is not careful, he may slide off the dragon's back. After flying in the sky for a while, Jack had enough fun and then began to lower the flight altitude. At this time, the Poseidon was in the middle of the narrow sea, and it would take another month to reach the destination, White Harbor. Jack entered the dragon spirit state and began to look for a suitable town in the valley. In the end, Jack chose a village that looked small. The valley was worthy of the name of a paradise. There was always a rebellion outside. As long as the Blood Gate was not lost, the valley could stay out of it. The village was not big, and it seemed that there were only more than 1,000 people, but there was a tailor shop and a blacksmith shop. This was also the reason why Jack chose this place. The dragon saddle was not difficult, and it was similar to a horse saddle, but it was much larger and had to be customized according to the physique of the dragon. As Karakshu's roar sounded, the villagers who had been living and working in peace were suddenly scared. This feeling was like a cherry blossom man farming in the countryside, and then a J-20 suddenly landed here. Everyone fled in all directions, but the blacksmith and tailor whose shops were connected were blocked by Karakshu. The widow tailor and the bachelor blacksmith looked at each other, then knelt down and begged for mercy. Jack got off the dragon's back and threw 2 gold dragons in front of them. "Make a dragon saddle for my dragon. If you satisfy me after the work is done, each of you will get another gold dragon." The two were stunned for a moment, even forgetting to tremble, staring blankly at the golden dragon. Jack didn't want to stay in the valley for too long and urged, "Hurry up, my patience is limited, otherwise I will change to another one." When these words fell into the ears of the two, they immediately thought that Jack was going to kill them and go to the next town. So the two hurriedly picked up the golden dragon and then asked carefully, "This, Lord Dragon King, we need to measure the size, please." "I haven't measured it, you measure it yourself. My dragon is very smart, it won't do anything to you. Hurry up, my patience is limited." The tailor and the blacksmith looked at each other. Refusing now would be a dead end, so it's better to take a gamble and bet that this dragon really won't eat them. Then the two began to get busy. After taking out various tools, they first helped Karakshu measure the size of the body and the diameter of the neck. Karakshu looked at the widow and the blacksmith curiously. The two-legged beast that was originally just food in its eyes now has a name, human. It also understood why its father didn't let it eat people, because its father was also a human, and if it kept eating people, it would be detrimental to its father's rule. It became smart and realized that it was definitely not Jack's biological child, but adopted. But it didn't matter, the dragon spirit state made it and its father comparable to biological father and son. Jack also noticed the change in Karakshu's eyes, and it was obvious that Karakshu had become too smart. If the dragon is too smart, it is definitely not a good thing, because the smarter it is, the more it thinks. But it is different if it is blessed by the dragon spirit state. In the dragon spirit state, Jack and Karakshu are not like people riding horses, but like a horse, controlled by one brain. You can refer to the meta in Pacific Rim, where the brains of the two are connected together. It's just that Daenerys and Rogan's dragon spirit is dominated by Dany. As for Jack and Karakshu, it is because Karakshu is too smart now. After entering the dragon spirit state, they share a brain, which can be understood as Jack's right brain plus Karakshu's left brain. This feeling is very magical. As long as there is any idea, the other party will know it immediately and then react and act. 3 hours passed quickly, and the people of the valley were surrounded outside the village. They all looked at the behemoth in the center of the village from a distance, an ancient sky overlord that had disappeared for more than 100 years. The dragon has disappeared for more than 100 years, and 4 or 5 waves of people have died. The dragon has long become a myth in the stories of old ladies, but now the legendary ancient overlord, the powerful space dragon, stays in the Greywood village. Jack looked at the crowd eating melons around him, and he couldn't help but sigh that people are really curious. This group of farmers would rather risk being slaughtered by the dragon to come and watch the fun. Another hour passed, and several noble knights had arrived, but they still didn't dare to step forward to explore the details. At this time, the dragon saddle made for Korax was also completed. It was a bit simple, but the tailor and the blacksmith vowed that it was absolutely strong. Jack pulled it hard with his hands twice and found that it was indeed quite strong. Now that he is not on the free trade coast or the Seeking Island, it is not bad to have such a strong and durable dragon flame. The blacksmith even took into account the growth of the dragon and made the dragon saddle have a strong ductility. Jack was very satisfied with this and directly took out 2 golden dragons for them. "I will drive away the people around first, and remember to hide the golden dragon I gave you." The next chapter mainly introduces Littlefinger, and you don't need to read it if you know it. Chapter 119, the most dangerous man in the 7 kingdoms. After that, Jack sat on the dragon saddle of Karakshu. With the dragon saddle, the blessing for riding a dragon is very great, especially for riding a giant dragon like Karakshu that has no bulge on the back. Speaking of it, there are saddles, stirrups and horseshoes in the world of ice and fire, but they are limited to Westeros because the knight culture in Westeros is developed. But Essos has no horseshoes and stirrups. They know this technology. After all, there is no technicality at all. But the people of Essos are too lazy to use stirrups and horseshoes, only saddles, and most of the time they still like slaves to carry sedan chairs out. As for the Dothraki horsemen, the nomadic people with the most cavalry in Essos, Jack doesn't know how to evaluate it. Most of them have saddles and stirrups, but no horseshoes, or they don't need horseshoes. Because they don't lack war horses, they naturally don't need horseshoes to slow down the wear of horseshoes. But there are still a small number of people who are very confident in their riding skills. They believe that only by sticking close to the horse's back can they achieve the state of unity between man and horse. As Karaksho took off, Jack drove it towards the farmers in the outer valley. Seeing the dragon rushing towards him, all the people who were eating melons reacted immediately and fled. After Jack dispersed the crowd, he slowly disappeared in the sky. But not long after, the ravens in the valley flew madly to all parts of Westeros. Soon the news of the dragon appearing in the valley was spread, and for a time the people of the Seven Kingdoms were panicked, and many nobles who were still loyal to the dragon family were ready to move. King's Landing, in the Red Castle. Littlefinger, Petty Baelish, one of the strongest strategists in the game of power, received news from the Vale of Arryn, that is, the Vale. Because the Duke family of the Vale is the Arryn family, the Vale is also called the Vale of Arryn. Jon Arryn, the last Duke of the Vale of Arryn, who has died, is a very key figure. After his death, his wife took over the management of the Vale, but his wife not only loved Littlefinger deeply, but also poisoned him to death. Littlefinger is a very powerful strategist, and his life is also full of legends. Petty was born into a weak family, and his lifelong efforts are to improve his humble class, thirst for power and status, and hope to become a great man. Petty has an innate talent for money and trade, and is an unrivaled master of conspiracy. Of course, his ambition is even greater than his intelligence. Petty is short, and of average build, but has a handsome appearance. He has a pair of grey-green eyes, a small tuft of beard on his chin, and a little grey in his dark hair. Petty Baelish's great-grandfather was a hired swordsman from Bravos who served the Corbray family, so when his son became a sworn knight, he chose the head of the Titan as the family emblem. Lord Baelish's father was the one with the smallest territory among many small lords, and only owned some rocky land in the smallest of the Five Fingers Peninsula. During the Battle of the Nine Penny Kings, his father befriended Hoster Tully of House Tully, so Petty was sent to Reverin as an adopted son. At Reverin, Petty grew up as a ward among people of much higher status than him. The Tully children, Catelyn, Lyssa, and Edgemere Tully, were also the first to give him the nickname Littlefinger, a reference to his family's lands. As they grew up, Petty fell in love with Catelyn, but Catelyn treated her like a brother, and no other feelings. When Catelyn became engaged to Brandon Stark, Petty challenged the much older Brandon to a duel for her. Brandon easily won, but spared Baelish's life at Catelyn's request. Catelyn never spoke to him again after that, and burned every letter Petty wrote to her after Brandon's death. Unlike her sister, Lyssa Tully had been in love with Petty since childhood. She ignored his infatuation with Catelyn, and sneaked into his bedroom while he was drunk, because of Catelyn's rejection, and slept with him. The confused Petty may have mistaken Lyssa for Catelyn, and indeed called her Catelyn that night. He has since claimed, privately, that he took the virginity of both Tully sisters. Soon, Lyssa became pregnant with Petty's child. When Hoster Tully found out, he forced Lyssa to drink moon tea to abort the child, and banished Petty from Reverin, as the Baelish family was too weak to marry into the Tully family. Petty continued to have an affair with Lyssa Tully, even after she married Jon Arryn, and Lyssa convinced Jon Arryn to promote Petty to the position of tax collector in Gulltown. After he increased local taxes tenfold, Lord Jon began to promote him repeatedly, until he eventually became King Robert Baratheon's treasurer. His wealth and influence won him many allies and connections, including the guards of King's Landing, and he also ran a brothel, not only for money, but also for information. With these resources as a foundation, Baelish quickly gained a great increase in political power through a series of lies and betrayals. Just before the events of Book 1, Lyssa's husband, Lord Jon, the Hand of the King, discovered that all of King Robert Baratheon's children were not his own. Instead, they were the incest of Jaime Lannister and Cersei Lannister, and he decided to inform the king of this discovery. Petty skillfully manipulated Lyssa to poison her husband, telling her that this was the only way to stop him from giving his son away as an adopted son. After Lord Jon's death, he had Lyssa write a letter to her sister Catelyn accusing Queen Cersei Lannister of poisoning Lord Jon. After Eddard Stark becomes Hand of the King, Catelyn Tully arrives in King's Landing to discuss with her husband the attempted murder of Bran. Although she tries to enter the city unnoticed, Petty learns of her presence and takes her to a brothel. There, Petty tells her that the dagger used to murder Bran was his, but that he lost it to Tyrion Lannister in a bet. This is a lie that leads to Catelyn's capture of Tyrion shortly afterwards, and indirectly to the War of the Five Kings. Petty brings Eddard to his wife, and convinces him to put aside the matter of the dagger for the time being, as there is no clear evidence, and swears to Catelyn that he will help Eddard find Jon Arryn's killer. During Eddard Stark's tenure as Hand of the King, Petty tricks him into friendship. This is partly due to his feelings for Catelyn, but also because he directly warns Ned not to trust anyone in the Game of Thrones, including Petty himself, and he also helps Ned investigate Jon Arryn's death. When King Robert Baratheon was mortally wounded, he appointed Ned as regent and protector of the realm. Baelish advised Ned Stark to leave Queen Cersei's two sons alone. Joffrey and Tommen Baratheon were not the king's biological children. And never mind that Stannis Baratheon was the legal heir. The best way to deal with this was to ensure Joffrey's accession to the throne, to avoid a full-scale war, and to seize maximum power as regent. Lord Eddard Stark rejected this advice, hoping to gain the support of the City Watch with the help of Petyr in his fight against Cersei. Baelish agreed, but betrayed Ned at the last minute, and switched sides to support Cersei, resulting in Ned's arrest and eventual execution for treason. After the assassination of King Renly Baratheon, Petyr and Tyrion Lannister decided to ally with the Tyrells. In order to win the loyalty of those nobles in the Stormlands, who were unwilling to pledge allegiance to King Stannis, Petty volunteers to go to Bitterbridge, to convince them to form an alliance. By convincing both sides to agree on a marriage between King Joffrey and Marguerite Tyrell, Petty successfully forges a Lannister-Tyrell alliance. He returns to King's Landing with his Tyrell army at the same time as Tywin Lannister's army. The Lannister-Tyrell alliance attacks Stannis' rear in the Battle of the Blackwater, which lasts for several hours. It was Petty who caused panic among Stannis' troops during the battle, by having Gollin Tyrell dress up as King Renly. In return, Petyr is made Lord of Harrenhal, although Harrenhal is still under the control of Roose Bolton, who is under Robb Stark. Regardless, being nominally Lord of the Riverlands makes him one of the most prominent nobles in the land, despite the devastation of the war. Petty maintains contact with Sansa Stark through the Red Knight Sedontus, who he tells her vaguely that he can take her home. Petyr also obtained secret information about the royal family through Osney Kettleblack, Osfrey Kettleblack, and Osmond Kettleblack. Tyrion Lannister hired the Kettleblack brothers to be Cersei's guards. After he moved all of Queen Cersei's guards away, Tyrion thought they were paid to be loyal to him, but in fact they were Petyr's men. Littlefinger was one of the driving forces behind the War of the Five Kings, and even the main driving force. Even Varys rated him as one of the most dangerous people in the Seven Kingdoms. Chapter 120, The Imperial Conference in King's Landing. Petty Baelish looked at the letter in his hand expressionlessly, and no one knew what he was thinking. As one of the top players in this game of power, he didn't know how to describe his mood. Excited, nervous, fearful, panic, none of them, but anticipation. The dragons that disappeared for more than 100 years are real, and this ancient overlord has appeared in the Seven Kingdoms, and in the Vale. Now that the great melee of the War of the Five Kings is basically over, only some shrimps are left. Balon Greyjoy, the king of the Iron Islands, is a clown. Robb Stark, the king of the North, died at the Red Wedding. Renly Baratheon was assassinated. Stannis also fled to Dragonstone, after being defeated in Blackwater Bay. In the end, the Lion House, Lannister, won the War of the Five Kings and basically consolidated Joffrey's throne. The Reach, the Crownland, and the Westerlands are the territories of the Iron Throne and its allies. Dorne has always been more independent, the Riverlands were beaten to pieces, and the soldiers of the Stormlands were also defeated before surrendering. The North was awarded to Roose Bolton, and the Bolton family became the new Guardian family of the North. And Petty Baelish became the Duke of Harrenhal from this chaos. Although he still had no territory and vassal, this title was very important. Because in a royal meeting, Littlefinger told Tywin Lannister that the Tyrell family was going to secretly take Sansa to Dorne to marry Loras Tyrell. Therefore, Duke Tywin took action in advance and married Sansa to Tyrion. allowing Loras to marry Cersei Lannister. At that time, Cersei Lannister roared, "I'm the queen, not a mare in labor." As a result, she was frightened by Tywin's scolding. That afternoon, Cersei and Tyrion felt sad for each other for the first time. But Tyrion was better, because he married the most beautiful woman in the north. Although Loras, who Cersei was going to marry, was young and handsome, he was a gay. In exchange for providing information, Tywin Lannister, in the name of the king, let Petty Baelish marry Lysa Tully. Petty Baelish, the Duke of Harrenhal, was worthy of Lysa Tully. In addition, Petty Baelish's step-by-step strategy and Lysa's deep love for Petty made it easy for him to take control of the Vale. Although the nobles of the Vale did not recognize him very much, in name, he was already the Duke of Harrenhal and the Duke of the Vale. The next step was to divide and win over the nobles of the Vale, and then use the money he had saved over the years to build an army of his own. With territory, vassal and army, he would be the real dignitary and chess player of the Seven Kingdoms, instead of being ridiculed and threatened by women with forces before. If he had the power he has now, Cersei would never have said to him, "Power is strength," thereby despising his proud wisdom. Chaos is a ladder. Putting away the letter, Littlefinger took a deep breath. Greater chaos was about to come. This time he had territory and an army, and this time he would only climb to a higher position. After putting the letter away, he had to attend the royal meeting convened by Tywin Lannister. Although Tyrion was currently handing over the job of Chancellor of the Exchequer to him, he was still the Chancellor of the Iron Throne. But he was about to step down as Chancellor of the Exchequer and go to the Vale to take up his post. Of course, before that, he had to attend Joffrey Baratheon's wedding, where there were bigger surprises waiting for everyone. A meaningful smile flashed in Petty Baelish's eyes, and then he put on his macupe and walked to the Prime Minister's tower. Petty Baelish was not late, and many people had not arrived yet. After waiting for a while, everyone was together. Tywin put a letter on the table. The legend of the dragon is true. It first appeared in Dawn, and then in the Vale. My daughter was taken away by the descendant of Blackfyre and her life or death is unknown. Dawn also cancelled the alliance with us. All this is your fault. You are a demon. Cersei looked at Tyrion with gritted teeth. Tyrion had nothing to refute, because what Cersei said was indeed right. He advocated sending Myrcella to Dawn for marriage to stabilize Dawn, which was the most hostile to them, and he took action for this. But he would never have thought that someone would take Myrcella away, and Myrcella's life or death is still unknown. Everything that Myrcella has suffered, I will return to you one by one, and I will never let you go. Cersei completely tore his face with Tyrion, and Tyrion could only remain silent. That's enough. I'm calling a royal meeting not to let you quarrel, but to discuss how to deal with dragons. Varys glanced at everyone, and then said, now the Targaryen on the other side of the strait has 30,000 troops and 3 dragons. The entire Slavers Bay has been conquered by her, and renamed the Free Trade Coast. In addition, she has a lover, or a lover, anyway, because she is pregnant with this man's child. The man who appeared in Dawn and the Vale this time is her man, Jack Poseidon, who is known as the father of dragons. According to the news from the Little Bird, his prestige is very high, and he is not even worse than Daenerys on the Free Trade Coast. Varys curled his lips. Some of his little birds were slaves, but they betrayed him directly after being liberated. This shows how charming this person is. Even the little birds on the Free Trade Coast have been slowly driven away by the seagulls, and he has slowly lost the news of the Free Trade Coast. At the beginning, this seagull was not a match for the little bird, but later the other party must have spent a lot of money and became more and more proficient in intelligence work under the sparring of the little bird. How can 30,000 troops attack Westeros? Cersei was a little unimpressed. Varys glanced at Tywin and reminded him again, Your Highness, she has 3 dragons, and he has 1. Just a young dragon, growing up every day. But according to the news, the dragon is not small at all. Tyrion spoke at this time. The news from Dawn is that the dragon is at least 5 meters long. Petty smiled and said, the news from the Vale is that the dragon is at least 10 meters long. He was still gentle and seemed not afraid of the Targaryen family who were about to come back. Cersei sneered, Humph, it's just a rumor. Grand Maester Persil also said at this time, according to the records in the books, the dragon grows very fast, but it is definitely not 10 meters long as the intelligence from the Vale said. According to the normal growth rate, the dragon is most likely between 2 to 3 meters now. It must be said that Persil is still quite good. The size he predicted just matches that of Regal and Vasirin. But alas, Caraxes used cheats with the help of Jack, and Rogan was extremely talented, so the two dragons were the wrong size. Chapter 121 The Greatest Emperor in the World. No matter how old the dragons are, they will grow up sooner or later. It's just a matter of time. We have to prepare early. Varys' words made everyone silent. Dragons will grow up sooner or later. Varys is right. They must prepare early. Lannister and Targaryen are mortal enemies. The Wolf family rebelled because Aerys II burned the head and heir of the Stark family to death. Rhaegar, the heir of Aerys II, abducted Lyanna Stark, so the Deer family had reason to rebel. Only the sudden attack of the Westerlands came without warning, and even Jaime Lannister, who was a member of the Royal Guard, killed the king he swore to protect. The Mountain raped and killed Elia Martell, and even the two children suffered from the Mountain's murderous hands. It was because of this that the Martell family broke with the Lannister family. In addition, Baratheon is now sitting on the throne, and he also has the support of Lannister, which can be said to be a direct hatred buff. Tywin silently observed the faces of the people. He knew very well that these people were not loyal, especially those with gloomy minds like Varys and Petty. After a moment, Tywin spoke up. He first gave everyone a shot of adrenaline. Young dragons are not scary. We still have time to prepare. Moreover, dragons alone cannot rule the 7 kingdoms. There are also dragons that have been killed in history. Daenerys Targaryen only has 30,000 troops, and not enough ships. She is not strong enough to land in Westeros by herself. She needs allies. Tywin continued, it is very likely that Dorne has formed an alliance with Targaryen, but we have no evidence to take the initiative to attack. This requires Highgarden to strengthen its defenses at the border. Secondly, gather the Maesters to study how to deal with dragons. Dragons are also living creatures. No matter how powerful they will have weaknesses. As for Myrcella who was taken away, I will discuss with Olenna and send a few warships to find that huge ship. Now the Iron Throne has no navy at all. The navy that Robert spent millions of gold dragons to build was also destroyed by Stannis. The only naval power in Westeros now is the Arbor and the Iron Islands, and both have extraordinary navies. But the Arbor's navy is a little stronger because the Iron Islands Iron Fleet was hit hard and has not yet recovered. And this Arbor is also one of the overseas naval bases chosen by Jack in Westeros. The Arbor is an island in the southwest of Westeros, ruled by the Redwyne family. It is considered part of the Reach, and is separated from the land part of the Reach by the Redwyne Strait. The largest fleet of the 7 kingdoms, the Redwyne fleet, defends the Arbor. The Arbor is one of the richest regions in all of Westeros. The wine of the Arbor is the best in all of Westeros. The red wine produced here is extraordinary. The Arbor also produces golden wine. The wine of the Arbor is sweeter than that of Dorne. The pears produced in the Arbor are large and sweet. Merchants from the Arbor often sail to Qarth. It can be said to be a very good place. When Dany attacked Westeros, he asked Dany to personally order the island to be ceded to Atlantis. In addition to the King Ting Island, there are the Shield Islands, the Iron Islands, the Three Sisters Islands, Pebble Island, Crab Island, Tars Island, etc. Jack must control all these overseas islands. Even if Daenerys disagrees, it is useless. Jack will make her agree. The feudal system in Westeros has lasted for too long, and Jack does not want to interfere in the political power of Westeros for the time being. But Jack will not give up the surveillance and suppression of Westeros. From Jack's long-term plan, Atlantis' influence in the world must be strengthened first, then colonize the major trading cities in Essos. Finally, Jack is considering how to deal with the 2 continents of Westeros and Essos. Because the area of the 2 continents combined is too large. It is too unrealistic to incorporate the 2 continents into the territory of Atlantis before there are enough talents. According to Jack's estimate, it will take at least 50 years to build an empire spanning 2 continental plates. Then it will take a long time to settle down for the empire to stabilize. This was too long ago, so long that Jack was too lazy to think about it. After the royal meeting ended, all the scholars in King's Landing were summoned. They needed to work together to study ways to deal with dragons. Among them, Mr. Cai Kun, who had healed James' broken hand, proposed the idea of a dragon shooting crossbow. He had seen similar descriptions in ancient books. It was the dragon shooting crossbow that the Valyrians studied, and it was said that there was magic on the steel sword of the dragon shooting crossbow, which could kill the dragon with one blow. God knows why the Valyrians studied the crossbow to shoot dragons. Perhaps it was because the strength of the Valyrians at that time had reached its peak. Everything in the world was no longer in their eyes, so they were full and had nothing to do but study the dragon shooting crossbow. But this undoubtedly gave the scholars in King's Landing a great inspiration, and they began to study the crossbow in the direction of the dragon shooting crossbow. At the same time, Tywin also asked the Citadel to send some information about dragons in the name of the king. After that, Joffrey also learned the news. Although he was a little worried about the dragon, he felt more angry. His grandfather Tywin did not inform him of such a big thing, but held a royal meeting in the tower of the Prime Minister. Ever since he got angry in front of Tywin that day, scolded Tywin and emphasized that he was the king, he could feel that the ministers were more alienated from him. Joffrey was cruel and brainless, but in some things, especially when it came to his own power, he still had some brains. For example, now, on the surface, he was sitting on the Iron Throne and giving orders. But the one who was really in this position was actually his grandfather Tywin Lannister. The ministers under him all obeyed Tywin's orders, followed by his mother, and finally him. This made him feel ignored, like a mascot. An uncontrollable sense of humiliation burst out from the bottom of his heart and soon devoured his heart. Joffrey, who was getting angrier and angrier, summoned Tywin directly to the throne room. Tywin, who was a little confused, came to the throne room with his guards. "Your Majesty." Tywin bowed slightly and saluted. "Grandfather." Joffrey also greeted him. "I heard you have something to talk to me about." Tywin stared at Joffrey. His gaze made Joffrey feel a little scared, but he still said, "I want to hear a report on the content of my private meeting." Joffrey's meaning was very clear, blaming Tywin for convening the king's private meeting without informing him as the king. If it were a powerful king, the prime minister would definitely be a little terrified. But there was a problem here. Joffrey was a king without real power, and the prime minister was Tywin Lannister, the most powerful man in the Seven Kingdoms. Chapter 122, Joffrey is a bit panicked. The old lion Tywin was speechless. He thought it was something else, but this was the result. But Joffrey was the king after all. Even if it was just a game, he had to accompany Joffrey to the end. "You are always welcome to attend your private meeting, Your Majesty, if you want." Before Tywin finished his perfunctory words, Joffrey interrupted Tywin with some displeasure. "I'm very busy recently. I have to prepare for my wedding. As a king, I have a lot of things to do." Tywin said lightly, "Of course." Joffrey looked up at Tywin and then tentatively said, "You didn't hold the private meeting in the private meeting room, but moved it to the Prime Minister's tower." "That's right." Tywin didn't cover it up, nor did he make excuses to explain. He just told Joffrey directly. Joffrey asked in an upward tone unconsciously, "Can I ask why?" There was a lot of disgust in Tywin's eyes. "If you were busy, why would I have to deal with so many troubles? I'm working in the Tower of the Hand. I can save that time to deal with important matters." Tywin's patience was almost at its limit. Joffrey's marriage was imminent, and he had to convince the old woman Olenna to pay for the marriage, because the gold mines in the west were about to run out. "So, if I want to attend the meeting of the king, I have to climb the stairs of the Tower of the Hand?" Tywin looked at Joffrey on the throne, was silent for a second, and slowly walked up the stairs. When he came to Joffrey's side, the height changed. Tywin looked down at Joffrey sitting on the throne, and his powerful aura enveloped him. At this time, Joffrey unconsciously leaned back in his chair. He had begun to panic, and at the same time, he regretted his impulsiveness today. "I can send someone to carry you up." Tywin's voice was a little cold. Joffrey raised his hands twice, a little at a loss, and didn't know how to continue. Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind, and he said with a serious face, "Tell me about the Targaryen girl in the east, her man in the dragon. Where did you hear it from?" The whole King's Landing knows about it. Is it true? Joffrey said. Tywin frowned slightly. It seemed that someone deliberately spread the news to create panic, but he didn't notice it. It should be true, but after all, we haven't seen it. Don't you think we should do something? Like take the initiative? Joffrey rarely looked further ahead on this point. When I was the prime minister of your father's predecessor, the skulls of all the Targaryen dragons were here. Tywin looked at the ground, and there were dragon bones under the throne room. The skull of the last dragon is here, only the size of an apple. Joffrey frowned, but the biggest one is as big as a carriage. Yes, but that dragon died 300 years ago. But now dragons have appeared again, and those monsters that once conquered the world have appeared in Westeros. Joffrey's voice was much higher. In areas where these kings are not good at, I have already summoned consultants who are good at this to study how to deal with dragons. Besides, it takes too long for a dragon to become a giant dragon. It often grows 1 meter a year. You don't need to worry. Tywin certainly knew how big the threat of dragons was, but now they couldn't do anything, even if they wanted to. Targaryen was far away in the Slavers Bay, and the Seven Kingdoms had no fleet that could fight across such a long distance. And facing an army of 30,003 dragons, there was no chance of winning. The only thing they could do was to eliminate all possible allies of Targaryen in Westeros, sit firmly on the Iron Throne, and then find a way to make Daenerys take the initiative to attack when the dragons were not big. But this was not the most difficult thing to deal with. The most difficult thing to deal with was Daenerys' children. As long as Daenerys had offspring, the Iron Throne would never be stable. Joffrey spread his hands, as if he wanted to say something else. But Tywin had obviously lost his patience, and turned away directly, saying a polite word to Joffrey before leaving. I'll take my leave first, Your Majesty. Joffrey, who wanted to regain some self-esteem, was defeated again, and it was not his fault. The only one who could talk to Tywin and gain some advantage was the poisonous Queen of Thorns Olenna. Olenna was called the Queen of Thorns, the mother of the Duke of the Reach, and the grandmother of Little Rose Margaery. Her political tactics were no worse than Tywin's, and she had a thorough understanding of many things. For example, the news coming from Dorne and the Vale now. Olenna ate a piece of dry cheese and asked Margaery what she thought about it. I don't know. A 10-meter dragon. Maybe it won't be long before it grows to 20 or 30 meters and then takes back the Iron Throne that belongs to its own family. That's right. And you are now going to marry Baratheon, the son of the usurper. Maybe when you get pregnant, the Targaryen family will burn you and your child to death with dragon fire. Olenna seemed to have no worries at all, and even had the mood to scare Margaery. Margaery sighed. I just want to be the queen. My first husband was a gay, and died in an assassination. I finally managed to control my second husband, but now I have to risk being burned to death at any time. Olenna touched Margaery's hair lovingly. This granddaughter has been smart since she was a child, and she has been brought up by her side. Now her mind and skills are not inferior to hers. The only thing she lacks is experience, decisiveness, and ruthlessness. This little granddaughter always has a trace of kindness in her heart, which leads her to always fight with others within the rules, thus losing her heart to do whatever it takes. Don't worry, you are my most beloved granddaughter. I will take care of everything. Just attend the wedding with peace of mind. I won't let the dragon fire threaten you. Olenna's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness, because the news she got could not be confirmed, and she was not sure how big the dragon was. But since the dragon cannot be solved, then Joffrey can be solved. As long as Tyrell returns to the wild state again, he can continue to watch the fire from the other side of the river, and make a decision, after observing the situation. This is how the Tyrells got the reach. Patience and situation are the secrets of their endless survival. Margaery didn't realize what her grandmother wanted to do. She just thought it was Olenna's words to comfort her. Little did she know that her second husband would die at her wedding. It can be said that Joffrey's purple wedding is a gratifying thing, because for most Game of Thrones fans, there are only two pure villains in the entire Game of Thrones. The greatest Emperor Joffrey Baratheon, and Ramsay Bolton, the skinned little man. These two people are different from the good and evil of other characters. These two people show the audience only the extreme evil. Especially Ramsay Bolton, who is a cruel person himself, and he madly imitates the family tradition for his own identity. In fact, the Bolton family has not returned to their old business skinning for a long time. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123, The Quirks of Dragons. The news of the return of the Targaryen family with dragons spread throughout the Seven Kingdoms under the spread of ulterior motives. In just 1 month, Westeros, which had just settled down, was undercurrent again. It seemed that the originally clear situation was shrouded in heavy fog, and the instigator of all this was scaring a 12-year-old girl. I will strip you naked and make you wail in pain until you get pregnant with my child. And your brother and younger brother will be burned to death by my dragon flame, just like the grilled fish in your hand, crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. Myrcella swallowed the grilled fish in her mouth fiercely, and then put the grilled fish in her hand on the plate, but seemed reluctant to let it go. Then I will rule other kingdoms in your name, and finally hang you on the wall of the Red Castle, and your family will be completely destroyed from then on. Jack described vividly, and then there was a sudden noise in the cabin next door, and he frowned, and went down to check. Ghost said to Myrcella, if you are not full, you can continue to enjoy the grilled fish. Your Majesty's grilling skills are excellent. Seeing Myrcella's gloomy look, Ghost seemed to see Martha, his eyes-old. This grievance and gloomy look are exactly the same. It's a pity that Martha will leave him forever. Your Majesty is scaring you. There is no one in the world more upright and kind than His Majesty the Sea King. Although Myrcella is only 12 years old, she is obviously not comparable to Joffrey, the mentally retarded man. She asked weakly, but the Targaryen family and my father are enemies, aren't they? He also put me under house arrest here. This sentence made Go not know how to answer, because he also learned about the history of the Westeros continent. Since Aegon Targaryen conquered this continent, the struggle for power has never stopped. Countless people have become victims of this game, from princes and nobles to rural farmers. But isn't marrying to Dawn also equivalent to being under house arrest? But didn't you say that the Sea King is the most upright and kind person in the world? If that's true, then why did you put me under house arrest? Jeff frowned, then said firmly, then you must have committed some crime, so His Majesty put you under house arrest. This made Myrcella at a loss for words. She could see that the tall knight in front of her was a fanatical believer of the Sea King, the kind that was hopeless. Myrcella, who had tried to persuade Jet to escape, was a little desperate. In her opinion, it would be safer to marry to Dawn and marry someone she didn't know than to stay on this ship. Especially on the deck of this ship was a monster that had been extinct for 100 years. But thinking of the past month of getting along, she felt that the dragon named Karakshu was really smart. After quickly finishing the grilled fish, Myrcella came to the deck under Jez's watch. At this time, the moonlight sprinkled on Karakshu's beautiful ruby-like scales, which made Myrcella's eyes shine. Even Je couldn't help but watch for a while longer. Usually, Karakshu goes out to look for food at night, but today, for some reason, he didn't go out to hunt. Perhaps after coming to the cold north, the dragon began to be less active, resulting in a decrease in food intake. Myrcella wanted to touch Karakshu's neck, but was stopped by Jet. What if Karakshu was in a bad mood and swallowed the tiny Myrcella alive? That would be troublesome. The movement of the two woke up Karakshu. After the transformation, Karakshu's 5 senses were very sharp, and the two people noticed it as soon as they approached it. Karakshu stood up and shook his head. Karakshu turned his head to look at the two people, and the expression on his face seemed to ask if there was anything wrong. Je was about to speak when he heard Myrcella say, "You are really beautiful as a red gem. Can I touch your scales gently?" Karakshu flapped his wings gently and then placed one wing in front of Myrcella. Obviously, Myrcella's praise made Karakshu very satisfied. Dragons are all arrogant. Before their intelligence is enhanced, the IQ of adult dragons is only that of 6-year-old children. Those with better talents and intelligence are about the same as 10-year-old children. After the enhancement of blue and white energy, Karakshu has obviously improved in quality. Jack even worries that one day it will speak like Smorg. Maybe if there really is such a day, Karakshu can really sit firmly on the title of God of Sky and Fire. Unlike a certain fat house, Jack couldn't contact him before. If he hadn't sensed that Poseidon's mental state was getting better and better, Jack would have worried that Poseidon was eaten by some sea monster. Since Poseidon entered the Faith Galaxy, Poseidon was like sleeping and couldn't be awakened. Therefore, Jack thought that Poseidon fell into a deep sleep. After all, many legendary creatures have the behavior of sleeping. It was not until a few days ago that Poseidon woke up and told Jack about his situation. Jack immediately understood why the Poseidon he saw in his dream had such a large body and exuded blue and white mist energy. At the same time, he was also curious about the bronze coffin behind Poseidon at that time. Did Poseidon put him in the coffin and carry him on his back after his death? After Jack dealt with the two fighting maids in the next cabin, he ate 2 bites of food and came to the deck. At this time, Myrcella was stroking Karakshu's scales and constantly complimenting Karakshu. Karakshu looked like he was enjoying it, and he was no longer like before. Except for the blood of the Targaryen family, anyone who approached him would grin. This made Jack wonder if the dragon enjoyed the compliments and praises of other creatures, as long as it had the ability to think. After Karakshu found Jack coming, he immediately folded his wings and came to Jack to rub against Jack. Jack rubbed Karakshu's head hard. At this time, Karakshu's head was very big and it was no longer dizzy when Jack rubbed it casually like when he was a child. Does the dragon saddle still fit? Jack asked. A month passed, and the dragon saddle, which was originally quite loose, became tight, which shows how fast Karakshu is growing now. The scales and finger bones that Karakshu shed were collected by Jack, and they were used to make a set of dragon scale armor when they returned to Atlantis. Lord Poseidon, did you give birth to Karakshu? Myrcella asked curiously. Of course not. I'm a human. How can I give birth to a dragon? But I hatched it. I took a year to incubate it. Jack curled his lips. He really took a year to incubate it. It was strange that he wanted to put the dragon egg in a box at first, but he put the dragon egg on the charcoal fire for some reason. Jet, when can we reach the north? Tomorrow, Your Majesty. We can replenish supplies in White Harbor and continue to go north. Chapter 124 The Poor Northern Territory. Jack's main purpose of coming to Westeros this time is to solve the trouble of Jon Snow. In fact, according to Jack's own idea, the simplest thing is to kill Jon directly. But Dany thought of the blood relationship between the two and wanted Jon to stay in the position of the Night's Watch forever. As long as she doesn't threaten her inheritance position, joining the Night's Watch will make Jon lose his inheritance. But there is also a Melisandre in Westeros. In the American TV series, Jon was resurrected just in time to apply for the oath of the Night's Watch, and he would not stop until death. Jack promised Daenerys not to kill Jon Snow, but he did not promise to protect Jon Snow. Although the original book has not been finished, Jon's performance in the American TV series is not satisfactory, and so is Tyrion. Regardless of whether the two were forced to be intellectually reduced by the screenwriter or had selfish intentions, he would not allow any accidents to happen. Jack wanted to kill Jon, but he needed to change a method. He did not allow any possibility to threaten Daenerys' throne. Because the child in Daenerys' belly is his. Daenerys sitting on the Iron Throne means that her offspring will sit on the Iron Throne and become the king of the Seven Kingdoms. This will be of great help to the subsequent annexation of Westeros. So Jack is going to change his identity and help Jon Snow to the position of the commander of the Night's Watch. Then Jon Snow's identity will be announced. Finally, rumors are spreading King's Landing. Jon has restored his identity as Aegon Targaryen and has reached an alliance with his aunt Daenerys Targaryen. He is ready to be king in the north as the son of Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, and many people are responding. Rumors, especially in a society with low efficiency in information transmission, are very lethal. In this way, Jack doesn't have to do it himself, and the Iron Throne of the Lion family will do everything possible to kill Jon. The simple and unskilled borrowing knife plan is still an open conspiracy. But because the Iron Throne is now in a precarious situation, Tywin will do everything possible to stabilize the throne. Even if Jon is not killed in the end, it does not matter, because Jon's identity has been exposed, and it was exposed during the Night's Watch. This means that Jon will stay in Castle Black for the rest of his life, just like Maester Aemon. Maester Aemon is the third Aemon Targaryen in history, and the third son of King Mikarai. His grandfather Daeron II named him after his great-uncle, Daeron's uncle, Prince Aemon the Dragon Rider. At that time, King Daeron II already had 4 adult sons, 3 of whom had their own children. He felt that it was dangerous to have too many potential Targaryen heirs to the throne, so he sent Aemon to the citadel. Aemon forged his necklace, and won the title of Maester Aemon. He served an unknown lord until his father, King Mikarai, who was already king at the time, summoned him to the court, to serve the Iron Throne. He felt that he might replace the Grand Maester in the king's council, so he chose to serve in the residence of his eldest brother, Prince Daeron. After Daeron's death, Maester Aemon's whereabouts were unknown until King Mikarai was killed in the Battle of Starspa. In 233 AC, Aemon was recalled to court by the hand of the king, Brynden Rivers, to choose a new king. He was quietly offered the throne, but he refused, leaving the kingdom to his brother, Aegon. He then chose to go to the wall to join the Night's Watch, to prevent him from being used by a conspiracy, to usurp his brother's throne. King Aegon emptied the dungeons, and provided a group of 200 honor guards for his journey, who accompanied Aemon to the wall to take the Night's Watch oath. This included the Blood Ravens, and his personal guard, the Raven's Chief. In addition, Aegon sent his Kingsguard, Ser Duncan the Tall, to escort him along the way. During his service at the wall, Aemon read and sorted through the wall's vast collection of books. In a letter he sent to the citadel, he mentioned a record made by a ranger named Redwyne during the reign of King Doran Stark. The record described the journey of Redwyne and his party from the Shadow Tower all the way to Desolace Point on the frozen coast. Redwyne claimed that they fought against giants and even traded with the children of the forest. Aemon said in his letter that he had found many similar records in the library of Castle Black, and these documents should be credible. Rhaegar Targaryen sometimes communicated with his great-uncle through ravens. Aemon claimed that every man of the Night's Watch had their loyalty tested at least once. Aemon said that he had been tested 3 times, and the most difficult one was when he heard the news that the Targaryen family was destroyed in the War of the Usurper. He also used this to persuade Jon not to go south, to help his brother Robb Stark. If Jon Snow really returned to Robb Stark at that time, he would most likely be sent back to the wall by the upright Robb, or die in the Red Wedding. Jack needs to watch out for the bug of the Red Woman, and don't let her resurrect Jon. Jack sighed. It would be better if Daenerys was a little more ruthless. Jack directly flew a dragon to his face. He didn't believe that Melisandre could resurrect Jon after Caractacus turned Jon into feathers. But if Dany did this, she would not be the mother of dragons in other people's hearts. Dany is kind and has done a lot of good things, but as long as she does one bad thing, people will selectively forget the good things she has done and say that she is the Mad King in the world. The cruelty of the Mad King has been engraved in everyone's heart. Mad King has also become a synonym for cruelty, and people use it to describe all cruel nobles. The Poseidon left in a hurry after the White Harbor was replenished. Now the Poseidon is not safe anywhere, unless it keeps moving on the sea. Jack rode a dragon first, and the Poseidon will wait for him near Eastwatch by the sea in the Bay of Seals. And Jay and others stayed on the Sea Emperor to guard Myrcella, who was a very important person. As long as Myrcella Baratheon did not die, she would sooner or later become the key to the Stormlands. Just like Sansa Stark now, she was the key to the north in everyone's eyes. Caractacus's flying speed was very fast, and it only took 1 day to cross the north. In the evening, Jack landed near the last hearth of the Umber family. After letting Caractacus go to the wolf forest to forage alone, Jack entered the hearth alone. Fortunately, Jack dyed his hair black with dye when the Sea Emperor left. Otherwise, Jack's silver hair, coupled with purple eyes, combined with the recent messages from the 7 kingdoms, Jack was almost like sticking his ID card on his face. However, after entering the city, Jack found that he seemed to have thought too much, and no one was talking about the return of Targaryen. Even after Jack took the initiative to ask, he found that many people didn't know. Jack soon realized that he had overestimated the speed of news dissemination in the 7 kingdoms. Even with ravens, the spread of news was not so fast, not to mention that the ravens were all in the hands of the nobles. Not to mention the civilians, they might not know about this until Daenerys comes back. Moreover, the poverty of the north is far beyond Jack's imagination. The roads are bumpy, and there is feces and garbage everywhere. All the people Jack has seen are almost the same as refugees. Not to mention the people on the Seeking Island. Even Astapa, which was colonized by Atlantis, is better than this. The poverty of the north is really not covered. Even the prostitutes on the roadside are so dirty, it feels like their hair is in strands. If all the hair on her body is like this, Jack really doesn't know how the customer will start. Of course, if the price is also very cheap, then just pretend he didn't say anything. Chapter 125 Common People's Feast. The civilization of the ice and fire world is similar to that of the European Middle Ages, and the sanitation is very poor. Fortunately, although Westeros has developed for thousands of years in the Middle Ages and has not made any progress in civilization, its sanitation has not been without any progress. You must know that in the Middle Ages of Jack's previous life, it was a sanitation nightmare. For example, in 1533, at a ceremony to celebrate Anne Boleyn becoming the Queen of England, the new queen smiled and toasted the guests while swinging her skirt to show her aristocratic style. But even if Westeros has made progress, it is only limited to the progress of the nobles' residences. Other places are still dirty, messy and poor, otherwise King's Landing would not stink. People in the Seven Kingdoms do not use feces to pollute the land, because the church believes that feces will pollute the land. Of course, this is limited to the city. Most rural people still use feces for fertilizer, which allows them to harvest more rye and barley. Many people even go to the city to steal feces to irrigate the land. But this still cannot change the current situation of the city, because the old feces will be filled with new feces as soon as they leave. A large amount of animal feces mixed with human feces lay on the roadside. After a long time, they would pour the feces into the nearby river. Even the public wells were garbage dumps. The final result was that people would have diarrhea and die after drinking the water. The nobles mixed wine with water. Fortunately, the location of the last Hearth city was very far north. It was the northernmost city in the Seven Kingdoms except for the newly added land in the Black Castle. The cold climate covered up the stench of feces and rotten garbage very well. In the end, Jack found a hotel that looked pretty good and stayed there. The simple environment made Jack look sideways again, but fortunately, this hotel had pork sausage and vegetable soup for sale. Jack also ordered a glass of barley wine. Wheat wine can only be brewed by nobles. Commoners have no economy and are not qualified to brew wine with wheat or eat bread made from wheat. And although there is rice in Westeros, it has a slow maturity cycle and low yield. In Westeros, only the great nobles sometimes choose to improve the taste and plant it. After the pork sausage came up, Jack looked at the dark long object in front of him and frowned. Suppressing the resistance in his heart, Jack cut a piece of sausage and put it in his mouth. The beautiful taste burst from the tip of his tongue, and the fishy and smelly smell invaded Jack's taste buds. The taste was like the red sausage that expired, because it was not sold in the previous life of Malatang, just like chewing fishy plastic particles. Don't ask Jack how he knows what the sausage that expired, because it was not sold tastes like, because everyone has complaints at all times. Jack, who had no choice, quickly picked up the wooden wine glass and took a big sip of beer. A faint sour smell mixed with a lot of wheat husks rushed straight to the top of his head, and the alcohol taste was very light, obviously diluted with water. This made Jack's face a little distorted. He finally understood why the best-selling Poseidon Brewing was the trial version of Liu Jinlang. Because he still overestimated the brewing technology of this era and the consumption capacity of ordinary people. Even the trial version of Liu Jinlang's Poseidon Brewing, its wine quality remains clear. So as long as you buy a high-proof Poseidon Brewing and pour it into a bucket, it will become a bucket of good wine. Unless it's for face, the most cost-effective one is the trial version of Poseidon Brew. Because there is no distillation technology, and the resistance of yeast to alcohol is limited, the alcohol content of the wine is not high. But even if the alcohol content is not high, it is still wine, and no one can really drink wine as water. Although the nobles of the 7 kingdoms or the world's nobles all drink wine as water, they have to mix it with water. So the nobles will mix wine and water in a ratio of 1:4 or 1:5 and then drink it as water. Even add other spices or honey to the wine. Therefore, the trial version of Poseidon brew is more like a seasoning, allowing them to make double the amount of fine wine. But at any time, wine, especially noble red wine, is an absolute luxury. The lower class civilians do not have such good conditions. Barley wine brewed from barley is mixed with barley husks and then mixed with water to make delicious barley wine. Even so, a combination of pork sausage, vegetable soup and barley beer is a very rich meal in the eyes of the civilians in the north. Jack took a sip of the soup tentatively and found that, although the thick soup didn't look good, it didn't taste good at all. Jack was overjoyed and quickly chopped up the pork sausage and put it into the thick soup, which finally tasted a little better. After finishing all the soup in the bowl, Jack drank 2 sips of the clearer barley beer. Finally finished, Jack sighed. Jack didn't want to waste food. This was taught by his father in his previous life with the earnest persuasion of the 7 wolves. More importantly, he spent money. After eating this meal of common people's food, Jack decided to go back and ask the winery to research a cheap beer. It doesn't require to be like Poseidon's brew, but at least it must be something Jack can swallow. The name is Dare to explore the deep sea. Wine is a luxury, no matter where it is. Even the Poseidon brew on the Sea King Island is like this. 550 milliliters costs 6 silver coins. So Jack decided to pick up the lower level market that he had given up because of lack of manpower. At least the drunkards in Atlantis should have wine to drink every meal. Moreover, Jack has discovered in the past 6 months that people's demand for alcohol seems to be far beyond his imagination. Perhaps he can imitate the strategy of a certain duodo and capture the low consumption alcohol market. It's no wonder that Jack didn't expect that the alcohol culture in Western Europe and East Asia is different. First, there was a shortage of manpower at the beginning, and it was impossible to increase production. Second, the drinking culture in Western Europe and East Asia is slightly different. The winemaking culture in East Asia did not develop fruit wine, but used human grain to make wine. This resulted in the fact that, although wine is a necessity, it is not a necessity for civilians. Civilians prefer to drink cold boiled water after boiling water. In the Middle Ages in Western Europe, there was no habit of boiling water. Coupled with poor sanitary conditions and the popularity of fruit winemaking, alcohol became an excellent choice for people to replenish water. The nobles drank good wine. The common people drank barley beer or rye beer, which tasted bad and had many impurities. But the number of civilians is not comparable to that of the nobles, so when there are enough manpower and production, the profit of the bottom level alcohol market is also very considerable. Jack thought about the possibility of the Dare to the Deep Sea business plan for a while, and then went to the room on the 2nd floor to rest, hoping that the food in the Black Castle would be better. Fortunately, the wooden stairs were quite solid and did not feel shaky. Just after Jack went upstairs, the 2 people eating thick vegetable soup looked at each other, put down their bowls and followed. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.